Chapter 267. Back to Lin Jin. After leaving Zombie Cthulhu behind and waiting for Black Crow and the others to leave, Lin Jin found his surroundings much quieter. Ever since he entered the royal capital, Lin Jin felt like he had been constantly on the move. He was either ambushed, assassinated, or dueled with others. Now that everything was settled, Lin Jin heaved a sigh of relief. He could finally relax. Dueling with the old dragon was dangerous, but it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Lin Jin had gained a lot this time. Just the fact that Xiaohua could use the old dragon's blood to cleanse his bone marrow and condense a yin-yang dharma body was a huge win for Lin Jin. If this had happened anywhere else, no fifth-rank dragon would have been injured, which would have greatly reduced its strength. Moreover, this dragon had lived for more than 400 years and was almost a divine dragon? Any other dragon would never be able to condense a yin-yang dharma body. How strong was a yin-yang dharma body? Lin Jin wasn't too sure himself, but he was sure that while Xiaohua was still rank 4, he could already go toe-to-toe with weaker rank 5 beasts. This was the strength of a dharma body. Other than that, he could control ice and flames at will. Just like what Lin Jin had heard, Xiaohua's wolf howl could stir up the clouds and cover the sun. Which other pet beast would be able to do this? Being invincible is so lonely. Lin Jin caressed Xiaohua's head. Xiaohua was now about the same size as the white cat and was adorable. However, this was only temporary. After some time, Xiaohua would return to his original size once his spirit energy was replenished. White Ape was now like a human, sitting at the side and reading a book. This guy hadn't cultivated into a human form yet, but he could already speak. It was truly amazing. Being able to speak meant a lot. In terms of intelligence, White Ape had improved significantly. Speaking of which, Lin Jin had to thank Wu Qian from Cloud Sect. Thinking of this old Taoist, Lin Jin remembered his promise to the man. After a moment's thought, he decided to go now. He was in good spirits anyway, and he didn't plan to stay in the royal capital any longer. Now that He Yu's curse had been broken and He Qing and Lu Bin's promise had been fulfilled, there was no point in him staying here any longer. More importantly, Lin Jin didn't really like Jade Dragon Emperor He Qian. His Majesty was scheming and unscrupulous. Lin Jin didn't want to have anything to do with him, so it was best to leave as soon as possible. Before he left, he naturally had to settle the matter with the old Taoist. White Ape, carry the coffin. Let's go. Lin Jin left without delay. The coffin was huge and heavy. As a grassy continent beast, White Ape only needed to grow a little larger to carry it. Otherwise, it would have taken a lot of effort to carry the coffin away. After leaving the inn, Lin Jin knew that someone was observing them from the shadows. It must be the Emperor's spies. Ignoring them, Lin Jin had White Ape carry the coffin while Xiaohua lay on top of it. Lin Jin followed behind. Lin Jin wasn't familiar with the road, but White Ape did. Even if it was dark, he was afraid of being seen. Lin Jin wasn't afraid of danger, but he was afraid of scaring people. A large white ape that was taller than a normal person by more than a head, carrying a coffin on the street, even the most courageous person would be scared out of their wits if they saw it. Hence, Lin Jin used the nebula barrier technique. He learned to cast a small camouflage. With a flick of his finger, he pierced a needle into White Ape's body. This way, most people wouldn't be able to see it. Lin Jin didn't need to use the needle himself, and just needed to adjust his spirit energy. This was a skill-based spell. It wasn't difficult as long as one understood the rules and spirit energy. Lin Jin didn't know how to do it before, but after studying the nebula barrier, he gained some understanding. Of course, Lin Jin felt like he only knew the tip of the iceberg. But even so, it was enough to fool the naked eye of mortals. Truth be told, Lin Jin had heard about cultivating this and that, and cultivating blood contracts, but it wasn't until he studied the nebula barrier that he understood the true essence of cultivation and the mysteries of spells. Although the path of immortality had fallen and spirit energy had collapsed, Lin Jin didn't seek to become an immortal. It was enough for him to increase his cultivation and master some spells. As for the rest, he would leave it to fate. Just like his visit to old Taoist Wu Qian, Lin Jin felt that it was an opportunity. To the old Taoist, Lin Jin was his opportunity and vice versa. To Lin Jin, Wu Qian from Cloud Sect was also an opportunity for Lin Jin's cultivation journey. With White Ape leading the way and camouflage, Lin Jin easily reached his destination. However, while Lin Jin didn't know about this, the spies the Emperor had planted in the city were startled. Emperor He Qian had long taken control of the inn where Lin Jin and the others were staying. Although He Qian had decided not to disturb Lin Jin and the villainous experts, it was still necessary to keep an eye on them. This wasn't necessarily out of bad intentions. If they had any requests, he could satisfy them at once and provide them with assistance. When Lin Jin stepped out of the door earlier, some sentries had already noticed him. But who would have thought that after taking a few steps with the coffin-carrying White Ape, Lin Jin's silhouette would mysteriously fade away as if blending into the darkness. The sentries immediately chased after them, but they couldn't see them anymore. Their movements were swift. Logically speaking, no matter which direction they went, they should be able to see them. No matter how fast they were, it was impossible to lose sight of them in the blink of an eye. Frustrated, the sentries had no choice but to report the situation to their superiors. Lin Jin was obviously unaware of this. By now, he was following White Ape all the way to the abandoned courtyard where old Taoist was staying. There was no one living in this area. It could be said to be incomparably quiet and abnormally bleak. However, at the entrance of the courtyard, through the dilapidated walls, Lin Jin could smell a fragrant aroma. The aroma of meat mixed with the aroma of wine. He could even hear people talking. One of them was calm while the other was trying to escape. Lin Jin knew they were old Taoist and the monkey demon. Taoist Wu Qian, Lin Jin is here to visit, Lin Jin announced from outside. Coming, coming. A voice came from inside the courtyard. Coming, coming. Soon, the door opened and old Taoist personally came to open it. Lin Jin saluted him. Taoist Wu Qian, I'm here on curator's orders. Curator is busy so he can't make it in time. Please forgive me. Wu Qian knew that the person before him was the mysterious expert's disciple, so he didn't dare to be rude. Although he was a little disappointed, it wasn't that Lin Jin was being rude. He just felt like he had missed out on an opportunity. After all, if Wu Qian could meet that mysterious expert and ask him for advice on cultivation, he would surely benefit greatly and even improve tremendously. What a pity! Wu Qian was a wily old fox, so he could only keep this thought to himself. He wouldn't say it out loud, nor could he. It's fine, it's fine. Appraiser Lin, please come in. Old Taoist politely invited Lin Jin in. Then, he was startled to see White Ape carrying a coffin behind him. This! Old Taoist was stunned. Lin Jin saluted him. I was going to leave, but before I left, I wanted to meet Taoist Wu Qian, so I brought my luggage with me. This was luggage. Alright, whatever you say. Old Taoist invited the guest in. White Ape placed the coffin in the courtyard since it was huge anyway. With Lin Jin's permission, he sat down with the monkey demon and started chatting. Xiaohu was sleeping on top of the coffin at first, but a slit opened up on the coffin, revealing a feeler with an eyeball. It looked like a large snail's feeler, soft and sensitive. Chapter 268. His antennae darted around, seemingly curious yet cautious and afraid at the same time. By now, Lin Jin had taken a seat. Due to the dilapidated courtyard, the house was too dilapidated to move in. Hence, Lin Jin and old Taoist sat in the yard, using rocks as stools. Several dishes were placed on top of a wooden stool. Only the stewed meat was served in a bowl, while the others were served in oiled paper and leaf. Lin Jin could tell that this old Taoist had great taste in food. Even in such an environment, he was able to gather so much food. There was also wine. A jar of aged wine had been opened and its aroma wafted through the air. Old Taoist switched to a clean porcelain bowl and filled it up for Lin Jin. Appraiser Lin, I don't have anything good here. If you don't mind, you can try the dishes and wine. Old Taoist Wu Qian didn't feel awkward at all. He knew that if it were the curator here, he wouldn't be able to talk so freely. The curator was dignified and intimidating, while Appraiser Lin was much more gentle and refined. You're welcome, Taoist. I'm here on the curator's orders to have a chat with you, Lin Jin said as he picked up the bowl and took a sip. The wine wasn't bad. It was comparable to the famous brews in the city's restaurants. Lin Jin started the conversation by saying this. I was fated to witness the curator's supernatural powers that day, so I've been thinking a lot these days. I've been harboring questions for years and I need to get them out. Wu Qian took a sip as well. Lin Jin smiled. Feel free to speak your mind, Taoist. All right. Wu Qian gave it some thought. My master is Mount Tianhe's Cloud sect. This sect was in its heyday 1,000 years ago, but the path of immortality had fallen 1,000 years ago. But back then, there were still some powerful cultivators who could ride the clouds and cast magical spells. They were free and unfettered, cultivating the path of immortality. But after my master, Taoist Hihang, Cloud sect's population had withered and there were only 2 or 3 of them left. Pet beasts are popular now, but I'm still cultivating the ancient way. But as time goes by, my cultivation hasn't improved at all and I'm at a loss for what to do. Wu Qian narrated with a gloomy expression. The hardships he suffered over the years were nothing. More importantly, he had lost his goal. If one didn't even know what to cultivate, wouldn't one be at a loss? That day, when I saw Curator use the nebula barrier, I was shocked. I didn't think that there would still be a capable cultivator in this world who could use such a technique. In the Taoist books, it is said that the nebula barrier can change the sky and the stars. Ancient almighty beings were able to set up a country with a single thought, changing the sun and the moon and changing day to night. Curator may not be as powerful as the ancient almighty beings, but his cultivation is still profound. This humble Taoist was worried that there would be no one to guide me on the path of cultivation, which is why I asked Curator to give me some pointers. This humble Taoist would like to ask, would there still be a day when I cultivate according to the immortal Tao? When old Taoist Wu Qian asked this question, his eyes were filled with anticipation, like a lost person waiting for guidance. This problem was a little big. If Lin Jin wasn't sure himself, how could he give an answer? Well, Lin Jin pondered for a moment. Based on the current situation, it was an indisputable fact that the immortal Tao had fallen. Just like this old Taoist's heritage. After 1,000 years, it still ended up in such a miserable state. Hence, after some thought, Lin Jin answered honestly, it's hard for me to say if there will be a day when I cultivate according to the immortal Tao. It's the same even if Curator is here. Although you saw Curator cast his spell that day, you didn't know he was actually skilled in beast appraising. In essence, we're just beast appraisers. According to your Taoist teachings, we should follow the laws of nature. Now that beasts are in charge, why must we continue down this path? I see that Taoist priest also has a monkey demon by his side. I believe that Cloud sect must have a similar cultivation method. Why don't we study it? As for the immortal Tao, we can continue cultivating it. Coincidentally, I also have a few cultivation techniques here. We can learn from each other and improve together. Lin Jin's answer was satisfactory. Old Taoist Wu Qian's eyes lit up at this. He knew that the laws of nature weren't something he, Lin Jin, or even the Curator could explore. Just as Lin Jin said, since beasts were in charge, they should just follow the laws of nature. Next, Lin Jin explained visualization to the old Taoist. The old Taoist listened attentively. After that, Lin Jin talked about inner breathing. The old Taoist also had a corresponding technique. He compared it with Lin Jin's and lost. Obviously, the inner breathing technique that Lin Jin obtained from the Museum of Deadly Beasts was more powerful and orthodox. The old Taoist memorized it all. As for the vein-strengthening formula, the old Taoist didn't really understand it. That was normal. After all, the vein-strengthening formula had to be used in conjunction with the pulse-seeking technique. Old Taoist didn't know much about acupuncture, so he naturally wouldn't understand it. Hence, Lin Jin didn't explain much about the vein-strengthening formula. Since Lin Jin had explained quite a bit, Old Taoist couldn't just freeload either. Hence, he took out his Cloud Sect's secret cultivation method. It was mainly about the Edict Amulet. Lin Jin wanted to know more about this, so he listened attentively. Speaking of which, what Lin Jin gave Old Taoist Wu Qian were mostly methods to condense one's physical body, psyche, and spirit energy. The Edict Amulet that the Old Taoist mentioned was a proper Taoist spell. Lin Jin was a perceptive person, so after listening to it once, he was enlightened. The so-called Edict Amulet was mostly written with one's own cultivation and spirit energy. Usually it was cast by borrowing strength. If one wanted to cast a lightning spell, they could borrow the power of a thunder deity. There were many different thunder deities in Taoism, and some could borrow heavenly thunder. However, this was too mysterious and difficult to follow a set pattern. When Old Taoist talked about his area of expertise, his eyes lit up and he couldn't stop talking. In between, the Old Taoist drank wine and ate meat. He was clearly in high spirit. Everyone knows how powerful our Cloudlock Monastery's edicts were in the past. It's just that we didn't last long. In this humble Taoist generation, we can't even write a proper edict talisman. It's a shame. We can only rely on what we have. The edict talisman we gave to the White Ape was written by my Grandmaster. At this point, Old Taoist shook his head, hating himself for not living up to his expectations. Lin Jin was pondering over the edict Old Taoist had given him. It was indeed a profound technique, but Lin Jin had experience studying the nebula barrier, so he was inspired. Take a look and see if this is how a 5-elemental fire amulet should be written. Lin Jin dipped his chopsticks into some wine and began writing on the stone slab. Old Taoist Wu Qian had drunk quite a bit, so he was a little tipsy. He craned his neck to watch Lin Jin write the edict on the stone slab. One glance and he was stunned. He rubbed his eyes. Why does it feel like there's a ball of fire? Wu Qian thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. When he looked again, it was real. Not only was there a ball of fire, but it was actually burning. Forget Old Taoist Wu Qian, even Lin Jin was startled. He had just finished writing the edict and tried to activate it. To his surprise, the stone slab actually burst into flames. Moments later, the stone slab was charred black and cracked. This fire was no small matter. Chapter 269. Forget Wu Qian, even White Ape and the Monkey Demon who were chatting in the yard were startled. The tentacles in the coffin immediately retracted as if they were frightened. Xiao Hua, on the other hand, wore an odd expression as if he was intrigued. This. Wu Qian spilled the wine in his bowl. This is a 5-elemental fire amulet. Wu Qian put down his bowl and finally said. He was astounded. The 5-elemental fire amulet was an edict that had been passed down in Cloud Sect for generations. No one in his master's generation had been able to cast it. Although the edict had been passed down, no one could write a real 5-elemental fire amulet. But today, Lin Jin, who was writing a 5-elemental fire amulet for the first time, managed to do it. Moreover, he activated it and drew in the yang flames. It took Wu Qian a long time to come to his senses. He looked at the burning edict and asked, Appraiser Lin, have you learned the edict script for the 5-elemental fire amulet before? Truth be told, Lin Jin was surprised too. He shook his head. Indeed, he had never learned it before. However, he had a rough idea of why the edict he wrote was effective. Because of his earlier study of the edict, Lin Jin realized that part of the edict was about borrowing strength. Old Taoist Wu Qian mentioned that he had been writing for decades without success. Lin Jin wondered if there was a problem with the borrowing strength. Hence, he changed some parts of the edict script. And it worked. Wu Qian was still in shock and confusion when Lin Jin said with a smile, "Sir, take a closer look at this edict script. What's different from what you know?" This was a very obvious hint. At this, the old Taoist quickly took a closer look and realized where the problem lay. The 5-elemental fire amulet edict Lin Jin wrote was slightly different from what he knew. It was an order from the Lord to borrow fire to defend against enemies. Instead of the 5-elemental fire god that he was familiar with, the edict was written in several other unfamiliar symbols. Appraiser Lin, which divine lord's name are you writing? Wu Qian couldn't figure it out, so he humbly asked for guidance. Lin Jin smiled. "It's not a divine lord. It's the name of my pet beast." "What? Pet beast?" Wu Qian was shocked. Lin Jin beckoned for Xiaohua to come over. Xiaohua was currently the size of a cat, covered in fiery fur that gave him a spiritual aura. This was the Dharmakaya. Wu Qian stared at Xiaohua's firewolf, unable to believe that the fire in Lin Jin's 5-elemental fire amulet was borrowed from this firewolf. Lin Jin knew he succeeded not because he was more familiar with the fire amulet than Old Taoist, but because he had grasped the key to it. Old Taoist's fire amulet had been useless because it didn't contain any yang fire spirit energy. It wasn't like the edict amulet passed down by Old Taoist's ancestors. Just like the one Old Taoist used before, even if the edict amulet contained the corresponding supernatural powers, it wouldn't work if Lin Jin had to write a new one. The key to writing a new one was that it couldn't borrow the fire god's yang fire spirit energy. Since that was the case, Lin Jin figured he might as well go against common sense. After all, the path of immortality had fallen and the 5-elemental fire god might no longer exist. How was he supposed to borrow the Divine Lord's power by using his name? Lin Jin figured that a Divine Lord must have many Dharmakaya for others to borrow power from and worship them. Since that was the case, why couldn't Xiaohua do the same? Hence, he borrowed Xiaohua's yang fire spirit energy and it worked. This was what Lin Jin had learned. Without holding back, he told Old Taoist Wu Qian everything. The latter was dumbfounded. At first, it sounded like a fantasy story, but the more he thought about it, the more reasonable it seemed. Moreover, he also discovered something that made him feel a little terrified. Appraiser Lin's pet beast was a pet beast with a Dharmakaya? Wasn't this a little too ridiculous? Others might not know what a Dharmakaya was, but how could Old Taoist Wu Qian not know? After all, he was an orthodox descendant of an immortal sect. Putting everything else aside, just in the past of his Cloud sect alone, there had been more than one expert who managed to cultivate a Dharma body. Thus, he had a deep understanding of Dharma bodies. To think that he would actually get to witness a Dharmakaya with his own eyes. But the problem was, the pet beast with the Dharmakaya was a pet beast. This was something the Old Taoist never expected. What a waste. This was what Wu Qian was feeling right now. However, Wu Qian would never say this out loud. Moreover, he was now extremely impressed by Lin Jin, musing, as expected of an expert's disciple. Although the 5-elemental fire amulet wasn't a profound spell, it was almost extinct at this stage. Who would have thought that Appraiser Lin would come up with another method to cast it? This was what an expert should be like. Wu Qian immediately taught Lin Jin the writing method of another edict amulet left behind in Cloud sect. Previously, it was the 5-elemental fire amulet. This time, it was the 5-elemental thunder amulet. Cloud sect only had these two types of 5-elemental amulet. However, Lin Jin couldn't cast the 5-elemental thunder amulet now because he didn't have anything to borrow. Unless he could find a pet beast with a thunder attribute and a Dharmakaya, he would have to rely on it. The two chatted as they ate. Deep into the night, the dried wine and meat were all gone. They were talking about the study of pet beasts, including monsters. Appraiser Lin, the beast energy formation that curator gave me is truly amazing. I've already let the monkey demon cultivate it. Wu Qian suddenly changed the topic to the monkey demon. Lin Jin knew what Wu Qian was thinking, so he smiled. Let me take a look at that monkey demon for you, Taoist. Wu Qian was overjoyed and immediately called the monkey demon over. The monkey demon was quite restless. Having been chatting earlier, he was now dozing off out of boredom. Upon hearing the old Taoist call for him, the monkey demon shook his head and came over reluctantly. Let Appraiser Lin take a look, the old Taoist said with a straight face. Having been trained by the old Taoist for so many years, the monkey demon knew etiquette, so he went over to bow. Greetings, Appraiser Lin. Lin Jin nodded. With a flick of his fingers, a flying needle pierced into the monkey demon's acupoint. Lin Jin had perfected this acupuncture technique so much that the monkey demon couldn't even tell that Lin Jin had probed his acupoint. Lin Jin clicked his tongue in wonder at the monkey demon's state. Despite being only a rank 2 monster, he had mastered the art of transfiguration, refined his hyoid bone, and even understood human speech. Impressive. But then again, Lin Jin remembered that the old Taoist's Cloud sect had an edict amulet specifically for monsters to refine their hyoid bone and transform into humans. That was why the monkey demon could transform into a human and speak at rank 2. From a certain perspective, the old Taoist's Cloud sect must have been an impressive immortal sect in the past. By now, Lin Jin had recorded the monkey demon into the Museum of Deadly Beasts. The monkey demon's information was extremely detailed. After a glance, Lin Jin mused that this monkey demon was a rare monster with great potential. Besides potential, the monkey demon had accumulated a lot of experience and was already showing signs of evolution. Since that was the case, Lin Jin might as well do the monkey a favor and help it evolve. To Lin Jin, promoting a rank 1 to rank 2, or from rank 2 to rank 3 was a piece of cake. Boom! An aura emanated from the monkey demon's body. Chapter 270. The old Taoist was naturally shocked by the aura of a third-rank demon beast that emanated from the monkey demon's body. How could Wu Qian not tell that the monkey demon's sudden evolution had something to do with Appraiser Lin? But what made him ashamed was that Wu Qian couldn't tell how the monkey demon evolved at all. This was what it meant to be an expert. Not only was Lin Jin's beast appraising skills unparalleled at such a young age, but he was also incredibly perceptive when it came to cultivating their Cloud Sect's edict amulet. Wu Qian felt like he had lived his life for decades in vain. Noticing the dejected look on the old Taoist's face, Lin Jin gave it some thought and comforted him. Taoist, please don't think too much about it. Beast appraising and treating is my specialty, and the monkey demon already showed signs of evolution, so I was just taking advantage of the situation. As for the edict amulet, it was just a random idea I came up with on a whim. Random? When it came to cultivation, how could it be explained by guessing? Wu Qian knew Lin Jin was trying to console him, and he was grateful for the gesture. Wu Qian flashed a carefree smile, his initial gloominess and disappointment gone. I met this monkey demon by chance during my travels. I taught him spells and gave him the edict amulet. He has been with me for more than 10 years now and has become my only disciple. Thanks to Appraiser Lin's help, he managed to evolve. From now on, it'll be more convenient for us to traverse the martial world. Even if we encounter danger, we'll be able to handle it. The old Taoist was telling the truth. Back when they were rank 2, they had to be more cautious. If they encountered troublesome opponents, they would tolerate them as much as they could. Now that the monkey demon was at the 3rd rank, there was no need for it to endure anything that it could not endure anymore. Under normal circumstances, a 3rd-rank demonic beast could deal with it easily. In addition, it had learned the beast energy training art, so the monkey demon's ability was probably much greater than before. Knowing that Lin Jin was his benefactor, the monkey demon knelt down and kowtowed to him. Lin Jin was reminded of the Taoist temple deep in the mountains in Shonger's hometown. That was where Shonger and Little Five were taught their cultivation. Lin Jin had planned to explore the place, but since he met old Taoist Wu Qian, he figured he might as well ask. At that moment, Lin Jin saluted him and asked, "There's something I'd like to ask you, sir." Having witnessed Lin Jin's capabilities, Wu Qian didn't dare to accept his courtesy. He quickly bowed in return. "I wouldn't dare. Appraiser Lin, feel free to ask me anything in the future. If I know anything, I'll answer you truthfully." "All right." Lin Jin asked if he knew of a Taoist temple in Mount Qixia. He didn't know the name of the temple, but he was sure that it contained a mantra that could turn wild beasts into monsters. A Taoist temple in Seven Cloud Mountain? Old Taoist priest Wu Qian thought for a while and shook his head. "I know a thing or two about the Tao sects in this world, but I've never heard of any famous Tao sects in Seven Cloud Mountain. However, if it's something that can make wild beasts enter the Tao and become demons, it must be something extraordinary, but I really don't know." Lin Jin was surprised, but on second thought it made sense. Although Old Taoist was a Taoist, he didn't know where all the sects were located, so it was normal for there to be some he didn't know. So, Lin Jin could only find the time to go there himself. Lin Jin had gained a lot from meeting Old Taoist Wu Qian. Not only did he learn about cultivation in this world, but he also obtained the secrets of the Edict Amulet from Old Taoist. If used properly, the 5-elemental fire amulet would be of great use. Before he knew it, a night had passed. Seeing that the sky was starting to brighten, Lin Jin knew it was about time, so he got up to bid farewell. Old Taoist knew that all good things must come to an end, so he stood up to send Lin Jin off. Appraiser Lin is currently in Maple City. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely pay you a visit. Wu Qian saluted Lin Jin at the entrance of the yard. Lin Jin smiled. "If you come, I'll be sure to welcome you with open arms. Farewell." "Farewell." After sending Old Taoist Wu Qian off at the entrance, Lin Jin led White Ape away while the latter carried the coffin on his shoulder. About 10 steps later, when they were a short distance away, Wu Qian somehow saw Lin Jin and White Ape's silhouettes gradually fade away. Old Taoist was stunned. "Is this a smokescreen?" Old Taoist's heart skipped a beat and he immediately chased after Lin Jin. He was fast and his body was tougher than most youngsters, but after a while, he couldn't catch up to Lin Jin, nor could he see anyone. Old Taoist immediately stomped his feet in frustration. "I didn't expect Appraiser Lin to know how to use smokescreen. This spell can only be cast with an amulet. I should have learned a thing or two from him. What a shame, what a shame." Old Taoist was filled with regret. But on second thought, he burst into laughter. "Look at my brain. If I wanted to find Appraiser Lin, I could have gone to Maple City in the future. Why did I have to do this? Why did I have to do this?" Having said that, Old Taoist returned home in a carefree manner. Even if he had to go to Maple City, Old Taoist wasn't in a hurry. Taoism was all about fate. Now that he had missed this opportunity, it meant that this was destined to happen. Hence, there was no need to force it. It wouldn't be too late to go when he felt like it. To think that I, Wu Qian, have been cultivating in a Taoist school since I was young. Up until now, I've been lacking in spellcasting and cultivation. I don't know anything about immortality, nor do I know anything about supernatural powers. All I know are some minor spells. I used to think that I was wasting my time and my days were wasted. But now that I've met Lin Jin, I finally understand. His confidence had been rekindled. By then, Lin Jin had already left the city. Although he hadn't been in the royal capital for long, Lin Jin had learned a lot, especially in his spellcasting cultivation. He had improved tremendously. Using rapid travel, no matter if he was on a mountain path or a flat plain, Lin Jin could travel at lightning speed. He was even faster than a horse carriage. But halfway there, Lin Jin suddenly stopped and let out a long sigh. I forgot, Lin Jin mumbled to himself. That Lu Bin said he would give me an eagle as a form of transportation. I've helped him out so much that I forgot to collect this last bit of compensation. Lin Jin couldn't be bothered to turn back now. Knowing Lu Bin's character, he would probably send him an eagle beast in the future. Anyway, Lin Jin was craving that eagle beast. Riding on it, one could imagine how fast it would be. However, even if he had an eagle beast, he wouldn't be able to use it. White ape aside, the coffin that contained zombie Cthulhu wasn't something an eagle beast could carry. It was better to continue walking. Meanwhile, Lu Bin had been released from the imperial prison by Emperor He Qian. Previously, He Qian had imprisoned Lu Bin to protect him. Now that the Jade Dragon deity was dead and Minister Yu's faction had crumbled under He Qian's ruthless methods, Lu Bin was no longer in danger. In the end, Lu Bin didn't know anything. After spending a few days in the imperial prison, when he was released, he realized that everything had been resolved. He first went to visit the sixth princess, He Yu. He Yu had woken up and seemed to be doing well. Her coming-of-age ceremony was in 2 days, and it seemed like there wouldn't be any problems. Even if he had to be cautious, as long as she made it through the ceremony, the curse within her would be completely removed. Lu Bin was obviously overjoyed. He was happy from the bottom of his heart. As for how He Yu recovered, Lu Bin discussed it with He Qing and learned from other sources that the mysterious expert curator appeared in person. Chapter 271. Lu Bin was indignant. He really wanted to meet the curator, but he had missed such a good opportunity. Especially after he heard from others that the curator had led villainous experts to slay the Jade Dragon deity. Although he didn't witness it with his own eyes, he knew that it must have been dangerous. But at least it was over. Lu Bin went to look for Lin Jin, but he couldn't find him. Lu Bin didn't think too much about it. Since the curator was the one who settled the matter, if Lin Jin wasn't around, he must have left with the curator or returned to Maple City. So, after He Yu's coming-of-age ceremony, he would pay Maple City a visit and thank him. Lu Bin didn't forget his promise. He immediately picked an eagle beast, planning to personally deliver it to Maple City in a few days. Inside the sixth Princess He Yu's chamber, He Yu, who could now walk on her feet, freshened up and went outside. He Yu had learned about what happened from He Qing and Lu Bin. She also knew who saved her this time. Although the dust had settled, she still found it hard to believe. "Uncle Lu, do you think the matter has been resolved so perfectly?" He Yu asked Lu Bin, who had come to visit. Lu Bin smiled. "I don't believe it either, but that's the truth. My lord, you've been carrying this curse for so many years and now you're finally free. This is a joyous occasion. I'll definitely make sure your coming-of-age ceremony is done properly." He Yu smiled. "Father is already making preparations for it. Uncle Lu, you can just come when the time comes. Also, don't call me Lord anymore." Even though the curse had been lifted, He Yu still felt melancholy. But that was just her personality. The pessimism from before had vanished from her eyes and was replaced by hope. "Back then, your mother was the Valley Master of Herb Valley. I was greatly indebted to her, and even became her disciple. You're the Valley Master's only daughter and I inherited my mother's legacy. I address you as my lord because I don't forget how you saved my life back then." Having said that, Lu Bin added, "But since His Majesty has already made preparations, I'll just have a meal with you. Of course." At this time, He Yu revealed a smile that someone her age should have. Seeing this, Lu Bin was even more gratified. He thought to himself that for this smile, he would be willing to give up his life. Next, He Yu inquired about the curator and Lin Jin. It was a pity that Lu Bin didn't know much. Fortunately, seventh princess, He Qing arrived at that moment and saved Lu Bin from his predicament. Lin Jin had now arrived at a village. The royal capital was several hundred miles away from Maple City. Riding on an eagle beast, It only took him a few hours to reach his destination. But if they walked on land, it would take 2 days. Even if Lin Jin could move like the wind, it was impossible for him to reach his destination in 1 day. Moreover, this was his first time, so it was inevitable that he would take some detours. Sometimes he would even take the wrong path. When they arrived at the village before dark, they finally had a place to rest. However, the village didn't look very big. From the hillside to the bottom, there were only about 30 houses. It was a very small village. As he was carrying a coffin with him, Lin Jin couldn't stay in the village for the night. Maintaining camouflage was troublesome too. Moreover, Lin Jin found an abandoned mansion not too far away from the village, so it would be more convenient for him to rest here. As for food, with Xiaohua and White Ape around, Lin Jin didn't have to worry about it. He just had to catch some wild animals. It was now sunset. Lin Jin was exhausted from the journey, so he found a stone slab in the abandoned mansion and sat down cross-legged to meditate. What he used was naturally the breathing technique. As of late, Lin Jin had been using this method a lot, so he had gained some experience with it. After entering a meditative state and regulating his breathing, despite the lack of natural spirit energy, he was able to calm his mind. Sitting cross-legged for a few hours was no different from sleeping for the entire night. While Lin Jin was resting, there was a commotion in this small village. Lin Jin had used camouflage on his way here, so no one in the village knew that an outsider had entered, nor did they know that he had gone to the abandoned mansion. And that was where the problem lay. After nightfall, not only were the dogs barking louder in the village, but some people also saw shadows moving inside the mansion. In this small village, this matter spread like wildfire. What's going on? There's a commotion inside that mansion. This is scary. Don't talk nonsense. How many years has it been since that incident? How could there be any commotion? Don't scare yourself. It's true. I'm not lying. Go see for yourself if you don't believe me. This conversation came from the village chief's house. Soon, a few men mustered up their courage and came out. Because the abandoned mansion was halfway up the hill, they could see the situation inside with the help of the moonlight. Sure enough, there was a faint glow. Many people in the village gasped when they saw this. That house has been abandoned for many years. The people in the village would definitely not dare to go near it. Even outsiders would not go there. With such an anomaly today, I'm afraid that something bad is going to happen. An old man in the village frowned and said solemnly, "Don't tell me that the outsider's family is here to take our lives?" Someone suddenly said. As soon as he said that, a gust of night wind blew, causing everyone to shiver and their faces to turn even paler. "Old Yang, don't *king talk nonsense," the village chief reprimanded. A few others chimed in, "That's right. Even if they're here to claim our lives, they wouldn't have waited for so long." The man named Old Yang was unconvinced. All right, I misspoke, all right? Tell me then, what's going on?" No one could answer this rhetorical question. Even if the vengeful spirits of that family of foreigners come back, we are not afraid. Even in the past, our village did not do anything shameful. Instead, many people were implicated by that family and died mysteriously. However, this matter is strange, and we have to guard against it. Everyone, get some tools for self-defense, and then gather together. Even if the vengeful spirits come back, we have the advantage in numbers, so we are not afraid of them. At this time, the village chief made the final decision and set the tone. The 30 or so families in the village were already afraid. Now that they had a backbone, they did as they were told. Everyone prepared their weapons and brought pet beasts with them. Although there weren't any ferocious beasts, there were a few mastiffs. If a fight broke out, they wouldn't lose to lions, tigers, or jackals. Lin Jin was oblivious to the commotion in the village. He was currently in a deep state of meditation. If someone invaded the yard, he would know. But he couldn't sense anything more than a few hundred meters away. As for why there was a fire in the yard, It was because Xiaohuo was playing on a withered tree in the yard. Xiaohuo was already a Dharma body, so he had a yang fire spirit around him. From afar, one could see the glow of the fire. Time passed and Xiaohuo got bored. He landed and lay down beside Lin Jin. White Ape was already fast asleep. After carrying the coffin for an entire day, he was exhausted. After the third watch, Lin Jin abruptly opened his eyes. Chapter 272. Although he was in a meditative state, Lin Jin had already spread his psyche around the yard. If someone approached, he would be alerted immediately. Just now, someone had approached. Could it be a villager? This was Lin Jin's first thought. At the same time, he glanced at the coffin and shook his head. If it was a villager, seeing this coffin might scare them away. It was better to hide it for now. At this thought, Lin Jin immediately took out a needle. Imbued with his spirit energy, he cast camouflage in the blink of an eye. This was the key to Lin Jin's spellcasting. Spirit energy alone wasn't enough, so he needed a magic tool. Those silver needles were the magic tools Lin Jin condensed. Once camouflage was cast, they couldn't be seen by the naked eye. Just as Lin Jin finished casting camouflage, he could hear footsteps outside clearly. Moments later, they stopped in front of the yard's door. Is this the place? Yes, this is the place. Looks like we're the first ones here. If we act earlier and get lucky, we might just be able to find the Beastmaster 4th scroll. Alright, let's hurry up. I heard that the Beastmaster 4th scroll has a spirit of its own and will only reveal itself today. If we miss this chance, we'll have to wait another year. As they spoke, a few people with various pet beasts pushed open the door and entered. Although their conversation was hushed, it couldn't escape Lin Jin's ears. Beastmaster 4th scroll? Lin Jin pondered for a moment. Of course, he knew about the Beastmaster scroll. It was a well-known cultivation method for pet beasts to form a blood contract. Once one's blood contract realm reached the 5th realm, one could begin cultivating the Beastmaster scroll. The greatest use of this cultivation method was to fuse the pet beast and its master into one. In other words, the two could fuse into one. Lu Bin, for example, had never revealed his pet beast. It wasn't that he deliberately hid it or that he didn't have a pet beast. He did. Lu Bin's pet beast was a cloud sea scorpion at the peak of rank 3. It was invisible because Lu Bin cultivated the Beastmaster scroll. With this, Lu Bin could fuse with his cloud sea scorpion to improve his physique. He could also use his pet beast's supernatural abilities. This was one of the most common techniques used by modern cultivators. Similarly, Minister Yu, whom Lin Jin had met before, used the Beastmaster scroll to hide the coiling dragon on his body. Of course, there were those who didn't use it, such as Yi Yuzhou. This expert had a blood contract on the 8th realm and a dead pet beast. Lin Jin had met him many times, but he had never seen him use the Beastmaster scroll. This was a personal preference. Just because Yi Yuzhou didn't use it didn't mean that he wouldn't. Currently, everyone knew that there were 3 volumes of the Beastmaster scroll, each with different effects. The first volume was the easiest to cultivate, but after fusing with a pet beast, the user wouldn't be able to unleash much power, less than half. The second volume was much better. After fusing with a pet beast, the user could unleash more than 70% of the user's power. Naturally, 1 scroll was easy to find, but 3 scrolls were hard to find. The better it was, the more precious and rare it was. As far as Lin Jin knew, there were only 3 volumes of the Beastmaster scroll. However, he had just heard about the 4th volume. Do you have the Beastmaster 4th scroll? Lin Jin's curiosity was piqued. With camouflage, even if Lin Jin, Xiaohuo, White Ape, and the coffin were in this abandoned mansion, no one could see them. At least, these people who had just entered couldn't. The strongest of their pet beasts was only rank 3, while most of them were rank 2. They didn't have any unique bloodlines, so they couldn't see through Lin Jin's camouflage. However, some of their scents were hard to conceal, and this made these people's pet beasts restless. Quiet down. I heard that back then, the Gua family escaped here with the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll and built a house here, planning to study it slowly. However, news of it leaked out and they got themselves killed. The entire family died in one night, and ever since then, the surrounding farmers have been calling this place a haunted house. If you ask me, I don't think it's a big deal. After all, these people died a violent death, and if their resentment turned into malevolence, their pet beasts would definitely feel uneasy, so it's not a big deal. With that said, the others couldn't be bothered to care about their pet beast. Lin Jin was still wondering if they would be exposed because of their scent. But before he could worry, the other party had already come up with an excuse. Great. Very powerful. Interesting. Lin Jin had been listening attentively. Just by listening to their conversation, he managed to glean a story from their conversation. And this story was just as interesting. White Ape had woken up too and was listening with great interest. Lin Jin shushed him, hinting for him to keep quiet. Lin Jin counted. There were 4 people there. All of them had cold, menacing looks on their faces. Lin Jin could tell that they weren't good people just by looking at their faces. The 4 of them began looking around the house, searching for something. The Gua family must have been quite rich back then. To think they could build such a nice mansion in this rundown place. Who knows what they were thinking? I heard that the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll is magical. It only reveals its light at a certain time in the middle of the night. How about this? Let's wait here and wait for an opportunity. All right. The 4 thieves nodded and sat down in front of them. They then took out some wine and meat and began eating. During this period, most of the discussions were about the Gua family's past, the tragedy that happened back then, and some of the achievements of the 4 of them. Listening to their discussion, Lin Jin was able to confirm his suspicions. These 4 were undoubtedly villains. According to them, the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll really does exist. And it's an extremely valuable cultivation technique. Lin Jin pondered, musing that this was a great opportunity. It would have been fine if he didn't come across it, but since he did, he might as well observe the situation. Who knows, he might even get something out of it. After confirming that the camouflage was working, Lin Jin regulated his breathing while he waited. Less than half an hour later, footsteps could be heard again. Not only did Lin Jin hear these footsteps, but the 4 villains did too. Someone's here. Be careful. We'll act according to the situation later. The 4 men's eyes were glowing and they were on high alert. Just then, someone shouted from outside, "The 4 of you inside, you're early." The voice was coarse and menacing. Following the voice, 2 people pushed the door open and entered. One of them was tall while the other was short. The one who spoke was the taller man, and behind him were 2 bears. One of the bears was tall while the other was short. However, they both had thick skin and flesh. One of them had red eyes while the other had a blue glint. One look and anyone could tell that they weren't the friendly type. The North Ridge duo. The expressions of the 4 villains in the yard changed. It was obvious that these 2 newcomers weren't to be trifled with. At the very least, they were more infamous than they were. You 4 devils of Mount Kuei have made quite a name for yourselves in the villainous world. But to be honest, if you insist on getting involved in this mess, it's still not enough. If you know what's good for you, leave. One of the North Ridge duo let out an eerie laugh as he issued a warning. That might not be the case. The 4 people in the courtyard also had fierce expressions on their faces at that moment. The 2 of you are seniors of the corrupt path. Logically speaking, we should be very respectful towards you. After all, the mighty Biling duo is ranked in the top 50 of the corrupt path's ranking of elites, but the 4 of us aren't that bad either. Besides, we have to be particular about who comes first. Chapter 273. Ignorant. Big Xiong of the North Ridge duo's expression darkened. The shorter second hero beside him said, "Big brother, these four don't know what's good for them. Let's just ignore them. Whether they live or die, they asked for it." At this, Big Xiong nodded and said nothing more. The two men came in with their pet beasts too. After looking around, they couldn't see through Lin Jin's camouflage either. The two brothers sat on the other side, facing off against the four devils of Mount Kuei. Relatively speaking, the North Ridge duo had fewer people, but their aura was stronger. The four devils had more people, but their aura was weaker. Things were getting interesting. Lin Jin opened his eyes slightly and glanced at the two newcomers before slowly closing them again. With Lin Jin's current beast appraising skills, he no longer had to rely entirely on the Museum of Deadly Beasts. He could basically identify the species and level of regular beasts just by looking at them. The North Ridge duo's pet beasts were both rank 3. While they were slightly stronger than the four devils, it wasn't by much. Their difference was very limited. These people had arrived, but they didn't make a move. Instead, they just waited. This proved that they knew what was going on here. Combining this with what Lin Jin had heard earlier, he deduced that these people were here for the Beastmaster 4th Scroll. In other words, the Beastmaster 4th Scroll really did exist. However, Lin Jin had never heard of it. It wasn't that he was ignorant. Not many people knew about the Beastmaster 4th Scroll. As for how these two groups found out about it, Lin Jin had no idea. Lin Jin pondered. Since these two groups knew about it, more people might show up later. Lin Jin's prediction came true. Soon, there was a commotion outside. But this time, it was a mess of footsteps as a group of people came in. "See, I wasn't wrong, was I? There's an abandoned house here. It's spacious, so we don't have to stay at a farmer's house for the night." A young voice rang out, followed by someone else. "Brother Li is right. It's a rare opportunity for us to learn beast appraising from headquarters in the royal city. Everyone says that headquarters is the holy land for beast appraisers in the entire Jade Dragon Kingdom. We've been looking forward to it for a long time now, and we can't wait to get there as soon as possible. Brother Nian, no matter how urgent it is, it'll take at least a day. After we rest tonight, we should be there tomorrow night." This time, it was a woman who spoke. She sounded young and had a lively air about her. Following the voice, a group of 7 young men entered. However, the 7 of them did not expect that there would be people in this abandoned house in the wilderness. So, when they entered, they were immediately stunned. Of the 7 people, 5 were men and 2 were women. Their average age was no more than 20 years old. It was obvious that they had just entered Jianghu. The 2 groups of villains in the yard didn't look like good people, so the 7 youths hesitated to enter. The Northern Ridge duo and the 4 devils of Mount Kuei were also looking at the 7 youths. These evil path experts had sharp eyes, and they could tell with a glance that the 7 youths weren't like them, who had come for the Beast King 4th Scroll. There was an 80 to 90% chance that they were really just passing by and staying the night. After all, passers-by who didn't know what was going on might come in and stay the night after seeing this abandoned house. Since none of the 3 parties said a word, the 7 youths were the first to give in. "So, there's already someone here. Then we shouldn't disturb them. Come, let's find another place to stay," one of the youths said with quick reflexes. Lin Jin was also sizing up the 7 youths. To his surprise, he met one of their eyes. With just one glance, Lin Jin was sure that the other party could see him. It was a young woman dressed in plain clothes. She looked average too, but her eyes were large and intelligent. Lin Jin had a good look at her. Upon entering the house, the first thing she saw was the coffin and white ape, then Lin Jin. But not the others. This woman was clearly no ordinary person. At the very least, she was talented enough to see through Lin Jin's camouflage. The woman didn't dare to say a word. After all, none of the people in this yard looked like normal people, no matter how she looked at them. The only normal person in this place was even more abnormal. Without a doubt, this wasn't a place to stay for long. It was better to leave as soon as possible. The people in the courtyard didn't stop them. Even though 2 of the 4 devils of Mount Kuei were looking at the 2 women lustfully, tonight's matter was too important. They also knew that it wasn't the time to be harassing them, so it was better to avoid trouble. And so, the 7 youths retreated awkwardly. That's strange. Why are there so many people in this abandoned house? I know, right? I was scared to death just now. Those 2 groups of people don't look like good people at all. They look so fierce. Brother Li is right. We shouldn't go in if we can. Big Brother Nian, there were clearly 3 groups of people inside. Why did you say that there were 2 groups? Furthermore, the most frightening thing is not those 2 groups of people. Instead, it is the coffin in the distance. Earlier, I saw that there seemed to be something inside that coffin. His voice scared the other 6 young men to death. Sister Qingzhu, don't scare us. There were only 2 groups of people in the yard just now. How could there be 3 groups? And there's no coffin either. Another girl stepped forward and asked with a pale face. The girl named Qingzhu widened her eyes and shook her head. How could that be? I saw a huge coffin when I went in. There was a big white ape next to it. Oh right, there was also a beautiful red-furred fox and a clean-looking mister. The more she spoke, the more scared she became. The other 6 youths were pale as a sheet. Qingzhu, we really didn't see anything just now. Do you think we're seeing ghosts? Ghosts. The other 6 youths shuddered in fear. 3 of them had pet beasts with them. However, their pet beasts were only average. If they were in trouble, they probably wouldn't be of much use. We shouldn't stay here for long. Let's go. Regardless of whether Qingzhu was telling the truth or not, this place was indeed inauspicious. Hence, all 7 of them had the same thought in mind. Leave. But at that moment, a gust of wind suddenly blew, sending sand and pebbles flying in all directions. However, this gust of wind left just as quickly as it came. Soon, it vanished without a trace. But after the wind disappeared, a beautiful woman was walking in their direction. The 7 youths didn't see how this woman came out of nowhere. But in the middle of the night, this woman was dressed in revealing clothes and had a smile on her face. She looked horrifying no matter how they looked at her. The girl named Qingzhu, in particular, widened her eyes as if she had seen something terrifying. Her entire body trembled. When the beautiful woman saw the 7 of them, she became even more excited and quickened her pace. Among the 7, the young master with the surname Li raised his eyebrows and gulped. He immediately called out to his people, opened the door to the residence, and led them inside. Chapter 274. Out in the wilderness, there were many monsters, and if one was unlucky, they would run into one. Young Master Li had heard from his family that if one encountered any strange creatures, one must avoid them. At the very least, one must head to a crowded area. Right now, the place with the most people was the deserted house. Although the people in the house didn't look like good people, they were still people. But that thing outside might not be the case. 7 people rushed in with pale faces. The 2 groups of people in the 2 courtyards were stunned. Could it be that these 7 brats are really here for the Beastmaster 4th scroll? 2 of the 4 devils of Mount Kuei immediately stood up with fierce expressions. Seeing this, young Master Li quickly saluted them. Not daring to lie, he explained the situation outside. Good men, we are beast appraiser apprentices from Shuyang City. We're on our way to the Royal Capital's Beast Appraisal Association headquarters to study and happened to pass by. We didn't want to disturb your rest but there seems to be something unclean outside, so we didn't dare to stay any longer. How about this? Once that thing leaves, we'll leave and we won't disturb your rest. Mr. Li was obviously forced into a corner. That seductive woman outside was definitely not an ordinary person. He wasn't just randomly guessing. He had a jade pendant that was passed down from his ancestors. If he encountered any demonic or ghostly beings, the jade pendant would heat up. Just now, when he saw that woman, the jade pendant was so hot that it scalded his hand. Hence, there was no need to ask. That thing was definitely vicious. As for this courtyard, although Qingzhu mentioned something like a coffin or a great white ape, young Master Li really didn't see anything. Moreover, his jade pendant didn't heat up in this courtyard, which meant that it wasn't a big problem. Something unclean? At this, the 4 devils of Mount Kuei couldn't help but burst into laughter. They were obviously mocking the 7 for being coward. Even the North Ridge duo looked incredulous. Villainous experts like them were numb to killing. Even if they encountered evil spirits, they wouldn't be afraid. Lin Jin, on the other hand, seemed to have sensed something as he looked up at the door. At the same time, there was a knock on the door. In an instant, the 4 devils of Mount Kuei and the North Ridge duo froze. There really was someone here? They obviously didn't believe the words of the 7 passers-by, but now that they really heard the knock on the door, they were a little surprised. It's really lively tonight. Fourth, go open the door and see what's outside, the leader of the 4 devils of Mount Kuei said. The 4th of the 4 evils nodded and walked over with his pet beast. When they heard the knocking earlier, Mr. Li and the others were already cowering in fear. Asking them to open the door probably wouldn't work. The door opened, and because of the angle, they could only see OL4 standing at the door, letting out a weird laugh. Where did this little girl come from? She's so pretty. This was a teasing remark. But in the next moment, the situation changed. Old 4 felt as if he was being dragged away by a huge force. At the same time, his pet beast, a jackal, pounced forward. Sounds of fighting could be heard in the darkness outside, but it only lasted for a few breaths before it abruptly stopped. After that, there was a strange silence. F***CK, something happened to 4th bro. 3 of the 4 devils of Mount Kuei reacted immediately. They couldn't be blamed for their slow reflexes. Everything just happened too fast and too sudden, so sudden that they couldn't react in time. Young Master Li and the others were so frightened that they retreated to the house, their faces filled with terror. What happened just now? Did anyone see anything? No, I just saw that person being dragged away. It must be that woman. She's definitely a monster. It's over. It's over. Don't panic, don't panic. We have more people here. That monster might not dare to come in. As they spoke, the 4 devils of Mount Kuei had already drawn their weapons and charged out with their pet beast. They were so fast that they could only hear the howling winds and the sounds of fighting. This made the 7 passers-by even more frightened. The North Ridge duo looked at each other. I'm afraid there's really a demon lurking in the outer sect. Old 2, since we're here today, we'll have to face it sooner or later. Let's go out and take a look. Big brother, I've been thinking about this. While it doesn't matter if the 4 devils of Mount Kuei are dead or alive, humans are still more reliable when it comes to demons. If they're dead, the 2 of us can't do anything alone. These 2 had a clear view of the situation. In the next instant, the North Ridge duo left with their rank 3 bear beasts. The sounds of fighting outside grew louder. At times, the ground would rumble. Other than the howls of wolves and bears, one could occasionally hear the thunderous roar of a tiger. Lin Jin had been watching the entire process. He couldn't see clearly, but he was sure that there was a monster outside, a monster that had turned into a demon. In other words, a demon. Demons weren't commonly seen, and Lin Jin wasn't mistaken. Using his spiritual eye, he could see a monstrous aura and tumbling demonic energy outside. Lin Jin wasn't afraid of ferocious beasts. He had fought many monsters before, but this was his first time encountering a demon. Although Lin Jin was confident in his abilities, it was better to be cautious since this was his first time encountering something like this. Moreover, be it the North Ridge duo or the 4 devils of Mount Kuei, they were all murderous villains. Lin Jin couldn't care less if they died. But if the demon charged in, it would be a different story. In short, Lin Jin was hesitant while Xiaohuo was calm. White Ape, on the other hand, couldn't sit still, scratching his ears and cheeks as he watched the monstrous aura outside. Zombie Cthulhu in the coffin reached out with his tentacles to look around. Among young Master Li's group of 7, the girl named Qingju was terrified, but most of her attention was on Lin Jin. Lin Jin noticed her staring at him. After a moment's thought, he beckoned her over. Qingju was stunned, clearly hesitant. She didn't know how she managed to convince herself, but she slowly walked over. Seeing this, her companions questioned her. Qingju shook her head in silence. When she got closer to Lin Jin, she bowed and asked, "Sir, you called for me?" As she spoke, Qingju noticed Lin Jin's 2-ring sleeve band and her face lit up with joy. She quickly asked, "Sir, are you a rank 2 beast appraiser?" Lin Jin nodded. "I noticed that you could see me, so I called you here to ask if this is a sign of your innate talent." Now that he was observing her up close, Lin Jin could tell that this girl was indeed talented. Her eyes were huge and there was a tinge of redness in her pupils. It was obvious that she had extraordinary eyesight and possessed spiritual energy. She was equivalent to a natural-born spirit eye. In the past, Lin Jin wouldn't have understood. But now, he knew that people born with a spiritual eye had immense potential and qualifications. No matter what they did, it would be much easier than the average person, especially when it came to cultivation. "Your beast appraiser's apprentices?" Lin Jin noticed the patterns on her sleeve. Qingju nodded. "Great, great." Lin Jin called her over just to ask her about it. Now that he had confirmed it, there was nothing else to ask. However, to him, it was fate that brought them together. These 7 must have stumbled into this place by mistake. Since they were innocent, Lin Jin would do his best to protect them. Chapter 275. You'll stay here later. Warn your 6 companions not to wander off. Otherwise, I won't be able to protect you if anything happens, Lin Jin instructed. Although Qingju did not know the name of the handsome young man in front of him, there was something convincing about what he said. And so, she nodded. Qingju didn't ask anything else. She could clearly see that the thing that looked like a fire fox next to this gentleman, as well as the white ape and even the coffin, all belonged to this gentleman. Yet, she didn't know that her earlier actions were extremely strange to Mr. Li and the others. Due to camouflage, they couldn't even hear Lin Jin's words. All they saw was Qingju talking to the air. One could only imagine how frightening this scene was on such a strange night. "Say, do you guys think Qingju is possessed?" One of them couldn't help but voice his thoughts. No one said a word. Mr. Li then whispered, "Strange things are happening all over the place tonight. Anyway, be careful. If anything goes wrong, we'll split up and run. Remember, as many as we can escape, we'll survive." Just then, there was a commotion outside. Then, several people ran back in a flustered manner. Mr. Li and the others took a few steps back in fright. They were the 2 groups of villains from earlier. However, the number of people wasn't right. Although the 2 men with the bears had returned, one of them looked pale while the other was covered in blood. His arms were limp, clearly suffering from severe injuries. Only 2 of the 4 devils of Mount Kuei had returned. They were only lightly injured, but it was obvious that they were terrified. As for their pet beasts, neither of the North Ridge duo's bears had returned. Only one of the 4 devils of Mount Kuei's pet beasts managed to escape. However, this tiger beast had lost all of its might. It was only a rank 2 tiger beast, so no one knew what could have scared it to this extent. The 4 men who returned also looked terrified, a stark contrast from their earlier ferocious demeanor. Right now, they were even weaker than Mr. Li and the others. At that moment, the North Ridge mighty duo and the remaining 2 villains could no longer care about anything else. They looked outside the courtyard with faces full of fear. "Who would have thought that we, the North Ridge duo, would fall here today? That fiendish demon is so strong. I'm afraid none of us here will survive today." The chilly wind outside had also disappeared without a trace. In the desolate house, the tense atmosphere became more and more intense. Finally, under everyone's gazes, a woman walked in. However, some people noticed that under the moonlight, this woman's shadow was like a ferocious tiger. The woman was dressed in bright red clothes and was incomparably beautiful. She was barefooted, but there was no dirt on her as she walked in. But it was this woman who caused those corrupt experts to retreat in fear. One of them didn't pay attention to his feet and tripped over a rock, falling to the ground. Cried Mr. Li. He removed the jade pendant from his chest, which glowed with a red light. "It's scalding me! It's scalding me!" Mr. Li said. At this moment, he grabbed the rope and stared at the woman. He said loudly, "She's a demon. She's here to eat people. Everyone, run for your lives." This was the plan they had discussed earlier, and so they did. They planned to scatter and flee. Some even wanted to climb over the walls. However, the woman in red chuckled. With a sweep of her sleeve, a strong gust of wind swept them back. They were dumbfounded. If they couldn't escape, wouldn't death be their only option? Suddenly, the woman in red noticed Lin Jin in the yard. She was dumbstruck. Up until now, Lin Jin's camouflage was still in effect. Mortals wouldn't be able to see him, Xiao Hua, White Ape, and the others. Even the coffin was concealed by the silver needles imbued with spiritual energy. However, the woman in red could see everything clearly. She first looked at White Ape and the coffin before shifting her gaze to Xiao Hua. Her eyes glowed as she mumbled to herself, "Dharma body. It's a Dharma body." Then, he turned to Lin Jin, only to see Lin Jin sitting there. His clothes were clean and tidy, and he had a calm demeanor. There was a cloud of mist lingering around him, rolling and changing as he breathed. It was a mystical sight. Although this person seemed ordinary, the woman in red could vaguely sense an aura of authority from him. Although it was well hidden, with her high cultivation level, she could still sense it. If she tried to probe further, she would feel shaken and immediately retracted her aura. The woman in red was a tiger demon with a high cultivation level. She had gained human form 100 years ago and even cultivated demonic energy, allowing her to roam the world. This time, she had something to do, which was why she had come from a faraway province. However, when she saw that the place she was going to, there were already people there. Furthermore, those people spoke rudely to her, which was why she was so displeased. Thus, she killed a few people who didn't have eyes. At her current cultivation level, she no longer needed to consume flesh to refine her blood essence and condense her demonic energy. But if she was in a bad mood, eating humans was a piece of cake for her. However, she didn't expect there to be an expert in this mansion. This was something she didn't expect. Putting that smokescreen aside, the little wolf beast's Dharma body alone was enough to stun her. She had long reached a bottleneck in her current illusory realm where spirit energy was thin. An expert once advised her that if she wanted to improve further, she had to cultivate a Dharma body. This was her only path. However, the expert who advised her didn't know how to condense a Dharma body himself. Hence, she had been traveling the world in search of opportunities all these years. Unfortunately, she didn't make any progress. In the first few decades, she still had a glimmer of hope. But as time went by, that hope slowly faded and she was completely disappointed. Hence, when she saw a pet beast with a Dharma body, she was stunned. As she had studied Dharma bodies before, the tiger demon could tell that the fire wolf had a Dharma body. There was no doubt about it. Did the fire wolf cultivate a Dharma body on its own? Impossible. The fire wolf's rank was so low and it wasn't a monster either. It was a pet beast that had formed a blood contract with someone. It couldn't have cultivated a Dharma body on its own. If that was the case, then its owner must be skilled. The tiger demon turned to Lin Jin again. The people in the yard had thought that they would die for sure. Next, they would most likely be devoured by this terrifying demon. They were all terrified and in despair. But what surprised them was that when this demon came in, other than the wind that swept back a few people in a panic, it actually stood at the door, as if it was in a daze. No one dared to speak. Silence reigned. The villains had witnessed this demon's terror before. They knew that their lives were in the hands of this demon, so they didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. However, there was no one in the demon's line of sight. Yet, she seemed to be able to see something. It was unbelievable. Chapter 276. Truth be told, Lin Jin was very hesitant. He had only planned to stay here for the night to get some rest and cultivate. Who knew he would run into trouble here? Not only that, it was so troublesome that it even involved a demon. This was Lin Jin's first time meeting this demon. It was much stronger than the old dragon. The old dragon was a rank 5 dragon beast, but due to his injuries and lack of strength, he could barely be considered a rank 5. However, this monster before him was a solid rank 5. Moreover, it was at the pinnacle of rank 5 monsters. In terms of strength, even if it couldn't beat the old dragon, it was definitely much stronger than him. It was best not to provoke a demon of this level if possible. But then again, Lin Jin was no longer the same as before. If they were to fight, he wasn't afraid. Xiao Hua's yin-yang dharma body wasn't something he cultivated for nothing. Now, Lin Jin was holding a needle between his fingers. If the other party wanted to fight, Lin Jin wouldn't hold back. It all depended on the monster's decision now. A few breaths felt like years to everyone here. Lin Jin remained as still as a mountain. He neither spoke nor made a move. Now, all the pressure was on the female demon. In addition, she was shaken to see Xiao Hua's dharma body. Already feeling inferior, she couldn't hold it in any more. After a moment's thought, she took 2 steps forward and curtsied. "Greetings, mister. I'm Hu Yuzhen from Mount Songliang." It was a respectful greeting. At this moment, the woman in red no longer resembled a demon. Be it her expression or voice, she was no different from a decent girl. In fact, she seemed like a well-educated and well-mannered girl. Everyone in the yard felt their hearts pounding. Other than Qingzhu, no one knew what this demon was doing or who she was bowing to. At least no one would be shameless enough to assume that they were the Mr. this female demon was referring to. Just as everyone was confused and at a loss for what to do, Lin Jin deactivated his camouflage. In an instant, everyone in the yard saw a man and several beasts appear out of thin air. What was even more ridiculous was that there was a coffin. Mr. Li and the others immediately recalled Qingzhu's words. Evidently, what Qingzhu said was true. There really was someone here. But how could this person disappear and reappear out of thin air? Was this person good or bad? Was it a man or a ghost? Mr. Li and the others had mixed feelings in their hearts. They couldn't describe what they were feeling, but they all hoped that this person was a good person. That way they might be able to keep their lives today. On the other side, the North Ridge duo and the remaining 2 villains had similar thoughts. They were knowledgeable and knew that the young man was probably not a demon. As long as he was not a demon, it was fine. To Lin Jin, since the demoness had spoken up, he couldn't play dumb anymore. Moreover, she was well-mannered, so she must be wary of him. If that was the case, they might not even need to do anything. Lin Jin got up and saluted them. Lin Jin was just passing by. "Sorry for disturbing you." At this time, Mr. Li reacted quickly. He recalled Qingzhu's words and knew that his life would be tied to this expert in front of him today. He immediately took a few steps forward and knelt on the ground. "We are all from the 4 cities of Shuyang. This time, we are on our way to King City to study, and we also happened to pass by here. In the end, we encountered a demon. Please save us, sir. Please save us." Mr. Li was no fool. After confirming that this expert was a living person, he knew that if they wanted to live, it would depend on whether the man would help them or not. As for whether he could be saved, that was an easy question to answer. That fiendish demon was indeed terrifying. The group of villains had lost 2 people in just a few exchanges and the rest were all injured. Their pet beasts were almost all dead while the female fiendish demon remained unscathed. From this alone, one could tell that the female fiendish demon was a terrifying existence. However, such a terrifying demoness was immediately stunned the moment she entered the yard. Everyone had clearly seen her dazed expression just now. Then, as if her personality had changed, the initially arrogant and demonic demoness became courteous like a respectable woman as she bowed at the young man. If it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't afford to offend him, why would she do this? Mr. Li's family was considered a prominent one in the 4 cities of Shuyang. Having seen the world since he was young, he immediately made a decision. That expert was clearly hesitant. He didn't want to get involved in this matter. If he really left, all of them would die in that demoness' hands. Qingzhu and the others knelt down as well. Lin Jin had never seen something like this before. However, he had planned to protect these passers-by, especially after learning that they were apprentices of the Beast Appraisal Association. He had a good impression of them. Qingzhu was a talented person with innate spiritual eyes. With just a little guidance, she would achieve great things in the future. It would be a pity if she died here. At this, Lin Jin saluted the demoness and said, "It's fate that we met. You've already devoured 2 people tonight, but they are also villains who have committed many evil deeds, so I won't interfere. I just hope that Miss Hu will stop while you're ahead and not kill again. It won't help your cultivation at all." This exhortation was very polite, but it also carried a deterrent force. Lin Jin wasn't someone to be trifled with. Back in the royal capital, he had slaughtered the Jade Dragon Kingdom's guardian dragon beast, so he had developed a murderous aura. If this demoness wouldn't listen, Lin Jin would have no choice but to take action. The demoness pondered for a moment before nodding. "You're right, sir. Since we met, it's fate. How could I not listen to you, sir?" Having said that, she turned to the villains and Mr. Li and said, "The few of you can leave now. Remember, you better not tell anyone about what happened tonight. Don't think that this tiny Jade Dragon Kingdom can protect you. If I want to kill you, even if you hide in that old Emperor's palace, you'll still die." Fiendish demons were fiendish demons. Being courteous was just an act. Being vicious was their true nature. This threat scared the villains so much that they broke out in cold sweat and nodded vigorously. Lin Jin stopped Qingzhu. After some thought, he said, "You're quite talented and you have innate spiritual eyes. You're most suited to be a beast appraiser, but you'll need a good teacher to guide you. Remember, when you get to the royal capital, look for Appraiser Tan Sun. Tell him that Lin Jin asked you to look for him. Appraiser Tan Sun will know what to do." Appraiser Tan Sun? Qingzhu and her companions were all shocked. In the Jade Dragon Kingdom, Appraiser Tan Sun's name was well known within the Beast Appraiser community. After all, he was one of the few rank 3 Beast Appraisers in the kingdom. All apprentices had heard of him from the day they entered the profession. It could be said that Tan Sun, who was a rank 3 Beast Appraiser, was a very prestigious existence in the eyes of these apprentices. To think that this man knew Appraiser Tan Sun and even helped Qingzhu build a relationship. This was an opportunity that one couldn't even dream of. Mr. Li and the other 6 stared at Qingzhu enviously. Chapter 277. Thank you, Mr. Lin. Thank you, Mr. Lin. Qingzhu hurriedly expressed her gratitude. Lin Jin smiled and waved. "All right, you may leave now." Qingzhu bowed before leaving with her companions. Once they were out of the yard, the 7 of them subconsciously hastened their footsteps. They were no longer tired. Even if they had to travel through the night, they had to leave this place as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the North Ridge duo and the remaining 2 villains thanked Lin Jin profusely as well. Lin Jin didn't have a good impression of these villains, but they were still lives. After this experience, all 4 of them were injured and their pet beasts were all lost. Lin Jin believed that they would learn something and change their mind. Of course, if they didn't repent and continued to commit evil, they would eventually meet their end. Lin Jin had officially embarked on the path of cultivation. After condensing the yin-yang dharma body for Xiaohua, his understanding of cultivation had improved significantly. Although his supernatural powers didn't seem to have improved, his mental state had improved. Once everyone had left, only Lin Jin's party and the female demon were left in the yard. Mr. Lin, ever since I achieved success in my cultivation 100 years ago, I've stopped killing the innocent. Even if I were to take action this time, I would only kill villains with malevolent auras. I wouldn't lay my hands on ordinary mortals. I hope Mr. Lin can understand this, Hu Yuzhen suddenly said. The demoness Hu Yuzhen suddenly spoke up. She seemed to be defending herself, but at the same time, it seemed like she was trying to build a good impression for Lin Jin. Lin Jin was puzzled. Logically speaking, with this female demon's cultivation and skills, there was no need for her to be so courteous or even respectful to him. She might not have given him face out of pure will. Lin Jin was afraid that she would suddenly make things difficult for him, but to his surprise, she remained so humble. Lin Jin figured that since they didn't know each other before, she must have a favor to ask of him. Sure enough, the female demon said, Mr. Lin, your skills are impressive to be able to condense a dharma body for your pet beast. I've long encountered a bottleneck in my cultivation, and it's been hard for me to break through. Years ago, I received guidance from an expert who said that the next step is to condense a dharma body. However, I've been searching for years without success. It's my fortune to be able to meet you today. I hope that you can understand how difficult it is for monsters like us to cultivate and enlighten me. Having said that, she bowed again. So that was how it was. Lin Jin finally understood why the demoness had reacted in such a manner upon entering. It was because she had seen Xiaohua's dharma body. Honestly, if he was in her shoes, if he was stuck at a bottleneck after cultivating for a long time and suddenly found an opportunity to break through, he would be just as respectful. Knowing this, Lin Jin felt relieved. What he was afraid of was the kind of person who fawned over him for no reason, and he had to be on guard at all times. Now that he knew the reason, he didn't have to worry too much. After all, he already knew what the other party wanted. Speaking of dharma body condensation, Lin Jin had experienced it once, so he knew a thing or two about it. However, ancient methods weren't easily passed down. Moreover, this was a demon he had just met. It was much more difficult to form a fiendish demon than ordinary monsters. The other party had probably cultivated for much longer than the old dragon. Furthermore, he must have received guidance from some expert. Otherwise, he would not have been able to cultivate to this level. He still had to be on guard against what he should be on guard against. However, he couldn't say it out loud. After all, he couldn't crush this demon just yet. Lin Jin could tell that this was a tigress that had turned into a demon. Angering her wouldn't be a good thing. It was better not to break the balance. Since you want my guidance, may I take your pulse and check your acupoints? Lin Jin asked with a smile, pointing at the two-ringed beast tattoo on his arm. This meant that he was a beast appraiser. Hu Yuzhen came to her senses. Without hesitation, she extended her arm to Lin Jin. This tigress's transfiguration skill was impressive. Even Lin Jin wouldn't be able to tell if he didn't look closely. Her arm was smooth and slender, fairer and more delicate than most women's. Just by looking at Hu Yuzhen's playful face, Lin Jin knew she was doing this on purpose. Lin Jin smiled. As a beast appraiser, he didn't even care about Shang'er's outstanding beauty. The tigress, Hu Yuzhen, was obviously inferior, so how could he be tempted by her? Using his finger to check her pulse, Lin Jin immediately entered her information into the Museum of Deadly Beasts. It really is a peak rank 5 demon, Lin Jin thought. Lin Jin mused. This was the first time the Museum of Deadly Beasts recorded a demon. The museum seemed to have expanded in size compared to before. Upon closer inspection, there was a new consultation hall named Demon Slaying Hall. However, there was nothing in this new hall. It was empty and Lin Jin couldn't figure out what was going on, so he could only ignore it for now. He then looked at the demon's information. Peak rank 5 Tiger Demon, demonized due to obsession, 491 years old. Desolate Tiger, devoured jade to nurture spirits, controlled black winds to devour living beings. Cultivated blood jade demon formula, wind manipulation, proficient in haunting. Demonized due to obsession, path of evolution has been sealed. Aside from cultivating a Dharma body, there is no other possibility of evolution. Demon slaying method is. There was a lot of information about this demon in the museum. Lin Jin read carefully, and after reading about demonization and demon slaying method, Lin Jin came to a realization. It was no wonder the Museum of Deadly Beasts had a demon slaying hall. So it was for this purpose. Lin Jin had an idea. Looking at the demon slaying method was troublesome too. However, there must be benefits after slaying the demons, so Lin Jin wanted to give it a try. Initially, he had no intention of guiding the demon slaying method, but now, he changed his mind. Mr. Lin, have you found anything? Hu Yuzhen couldn't resist asking after Lin Jin remained silent for so long. Come to think of it, she had been keeping her guard up. This beast appraiser was only a rank 2 beast appraiser, but he could manifest a Dharma body. This meant that he might not be a true rank 2 beast appraiser. A typical rank 2 beast appraiser would never manifest a Dharma body, let alone bring along so many beasts and monsters. Hu Yuzhen could see through White Ape's background at a glance. In her eyes, White Ape was at most a small demon. However, even small demons were rare in this world, not to mention one that followed the human race. Also, the one in the coffin was not simple either. However, the one that she was most afraid of was the fire wolf beast that had a Dharmakaya. That was the thing she had always dreamed of. Looking at Xiaohua, Hu Yuzhen's eyes darkened. There was fear, jealousy, and a strong sense of yearning. Lin Jin could see the look in her eyes clearly. This was a demon. Before this, Lin Jin had no idea what a demon was. Forget him, even if he were to ask the world's most talented people, how many of them would be able to answer the question? However, Lin Jin was the owner of the Museum of Deadly Beasts. Although he didn't know about demons before, he now had a deep understanding of them. To put it simply, demons were obsessions. Most obsessions in this world, regardless of whether they were good or evil at first, would eventually lead to evil. Be it humans or monsters, as long as they had obsessions, they could turn into demons. Hu Yuzhen was originally a monster. After achieving some success in her cultivation, she hit a bottleneck and began pursuing the path of the Dharma body. However, she couldn't find the right method, so she turned into a demon due to her obsession. That was the gist of it. Chapter 278. Since ancient times, various books and legends had described demons as terrifying and powerful, but that wasn't the case. If a mortal's obsession was too strong, they could also become a demon. But to say how powerful it was, it depended on the person's own strength. If it was a mortal, then it was a mortal demon. Similarly, Hu Yuzhen's demon was her original strength, the peak of the 5th step. However, according to the museum, demons weren't as simple as they seemed. If their obsession was too strong, they would be unable to extricate themselves from it and would often do crazy and terrifying things. To slay a demon was to sever their obsession. With a plan in mind, Lin Jin asked, "Miss Hu, in your opinion, what is a Dharma body?" Lin Jin began to guide her. Hu Yuzhen had obviously studied this question before. Without a second thought, she blurted out, "A Dharma body is obviously a body made of mana. One would shed their mortal body and change their spirit bones. Supernatural powers would be formed naturally, mana would be endless, and the physical body would be indestructible." The tigress's explanation was clear and logical. Lin Jin could tell that she had been trying her best to find a Dharma body all these years, but to no avail. She was not to be blamed for not trying hard enough, and it was not that she was unlucky either. It was just that not everyone and not every demon could succeed in attaining Dharmakaya. In other words, a Dharma body was only one possibility on the path of cultivation. It wasn't the only possibility. Lin Jin had no idea who told her that a Dharma body was her only chance to break through her bottleneck. But Lin Jin was sure that wasn't the case. Whether it was intentional or not, the person who said that had pointed her to the wrong path was equivalent to harming Hu Yuzhen. To use an idiom to describe it, it was misleading the student. Even with the Museum of Deadly Beasts, Lin Jin couldn't help Hu Yuzhen condense a Dharma body now. A Dharma body was something that could only be chanced upon. If one came across it, they would. If not, waiting for thousands of years would be useless. Hu Yuzhen clearly belonged to this category. To put it bluntly, it was impossible for Hu Yuzhen to cultivate a Dharma body. She wasn't cut out for it. At least, the Museum of Deadly Beasts didn't mention anything about it. As for whether Xiaohua could condense a Dharma body, Lin Jin didn't think it was possible. If it was possible, the museum would surely explain it. However, he couldn't tell her that directly. Breaking someone's hope was like cutting off their path. Although she had become a demon now, she could still be saved if her obsession was broken. If he really told her the truth, this tigress would definitely fall into madness immediately. At that time, the demon seed would be so deep that it would drown her intelligence, and she would really become an evil demon that only knew how to kill. At that time, what he would have to sever would not be her obsession, but her physical body and soul. At this, Lin Jin decided to stall for time and see if he could slowly resolve the problem. Of course, he could just ignore it, but since the demon-slaying hall had appeared in the museum, it was meant for him to sever Hu Yuzhen's obsession and turn her into a demon. If he didn't seize this opportunity, he might miss out on a great opportunity. Xiaohua, come here. Lin Jin waved at Xiaohua and the latter hopped over nimbly. His body was enveloped in a halo of light. Under the night sky, Lin Jin could see a trace of him, but when he looked again, it seemed to have disappeared. This was the wonder of the Dharmakaya. At the sight of Xiaohua, Hu Yuzhen's eyes lit up. Lin Jin said, "My pet beast has condensed the yin-yang Dharmakaya." Yin-yang Dharmakaya? Hu Yuzhen was so excited that her breathing quickened. She pricked up her ears, knowing that this expert was going to give her some pointers. That's right. The yin-yang Dharmakaya is a combination of extreme yin and pure yang. Using mana to achieve a balance, the Dharmakaya is formed. However, while the Dharmakaya is amazing, condensing it isn't easy. If you want to condense a Dharmakaya, you won't be able to do it in a short period of time. Lin Jin was telling her not to rush and to take her time. Hu Yuzhen stared at Xiaohua's Dharmakaya in envy. At Lin Jin's words, she quickly nodded. "I know what you're saying, sir. I've been traveling all over the world for years but to no avail. I know that condensing a Dharmakaya isn't suitable, but I believe that with your guidance, sir, I will have hope of condensing a Dharmakaya." Having said that, she was about to kowtow to Lin Jin. Lin Jin quickly stopped her. "If sir can teach me how to condense a Dharmakaya, you will be my second parent. When I condense a Dharmakaya, I will obey your every command without fail." Hu Yuzhen insisted on bowing. Lin Jin didn't stop her this time. Although he didn't give this tigress the method to condense a Dharmakaya, if he succeeded in slaying her demon, he would have saved her. Slaying her demon and breaking her obsession would make it easier for this tigress to evolve. Hence, it wasn't a big deal for Lin Jin to accept her bow first. At this time, it was already past the third watch period. Suddenly, Lin Jin sensed something. Looking up, he saw a bright moon hanging overhead. The gentle night breeze had stopped and in the next instant, the atmosphere around them changed. An invisible aura rippled out of the mansion, and white fog rose from the ground. Lin Jin could clearly see a vortex in the center of the fog, as if it was connected to another place. Just like when the visitation hall opened, a door appeared out of nowhere and the world inside was transformed. This phenomenon was difficult for most people to notice, not even White Ape Zombie Cthulhu. Only Xiaohua stared at the white fog vortex and growled. The next instant, a man walked out of the vortex. This man had the head of a lion and the body of a human. He was clad in jade scale armor and wielded a 7-foot cloud hammer in one hand. He looked majestic. Upon coming out, his lion eyes scanned the area, clearly surprised. Why are there only a few people here? He seemed to think that there should be a lot of people here. It was a lion monster. Lin Jin was curious. Where did this lion monster come from? Even he couldn't figure out what this skill was. Moreover, the white fog beneath the monster's feet seemed to be a form of concealment. At the very least, White Ape and Zombie Cthulhu didn't notice the lion monster's presence. When Hu Yuzhen saw the lion monster, she stepped forward and said, "General Lion Yuzhen greets you." Having said that, she bowed. "Oh, it's you." The lion monster glanced at Hu Yuzhen, clearly recognizing her. After saying that, he seemed to have thought of something and immediately flew into a rage. "That's right, I clearly sent someone to spread the news that there would be news of the Beastmaster 4th scroll here. There should have been people coming. Now that I don't see anyone, let me ask you, was it you, the audacious tiger demon, who ate them all?" He was actually denouncing Lin Jin. Hu Yuzhen frowned. "General Lion, don't accuse an innocent person. I ate 2 blind guys, but I didn't touch the others. They were cowards and ran away in fear." "How dare you be so stubborn?" The lion demon raised the golden hammer in his hand, and suddenly, a monstrous aura surged out. "Last time, I spared your life and let you leave. I didn't expect you to come again this time, and you even scared the mortals away. How am I going to explain this when I return? Today, I must teach you a lesson." Having said that, he swung his hammer. Chapter 279. Hu Yuzhen was a demonic tiger demon, so she wasn't a pushover. A dark glint flashed across her eyes as she refused to back down. "You brute, you haven't even mastered transfiguration. If you weren't guarding this door, I wouldn't have given you face if I wanted to go in and check out your Dharma skills. Now that I've met an expert, there's no need for me to beg you. Since you want to teach me a lesson, I'll teach you a lesson instead." Having said that, the 2 monsters began to fight. At the same time, the white mist beneath the lion demon's feet surged out and enveloped the entire courtyard. Strangely enough, the battle between the 2 demons under the white mist did not damage the deserted house at all. It was truly miraculous, especially since White Ape and Zombie Cthulhu were still unaware of it. This white mist clearly had the ability to divide worlds. Despite being in this small yard, through this white mist there were actually 2 layers of space. How brilliant! Lin Jin's interest was piqued. He didn't stop them. Instead, with a sweep of his silver needle, he directed the mist toward White Ape and Zombie Cthulhu. White Ape and Zombie Cthulhu jumped into the world. One sat up in shock while the other howled. The coffin shook incessantly. "White Ape, carry the coffin," Lin Jin ordered. White Ape immediately replied, "Yes, sir." Having said that, he went over to carry the coffin. By now, the white mist had thickened. Hu Yuzhen, who was fighting against the lion, seemed to have the upper hand. This was very normal. Just as Hu Yuzhen had said, she was much stronger than the lion demon in terms of shapeshifting. In terms of ability, she was also stronger. To Lin Jin, Hu Yuzhen was at the peak of rank 5 while the lion was only a rank 4 monster. If they were to really fight, the lion wouldn't be able to survive. After suffering a few slaps, the lion demon was infuriated. He cried out and finally, for some reason, he shouted, "You arrogant tiger demon, I will drag all of you into the painting world. Let's see how you cry then." The next instant, white mist rose from beneath his feet and it was hard to see anything within a foot of him. Lin Jin took out his needle just in case. However, nothing dangerous happened after that. Other than the white mist blotting out the sun, there were no signs of the enemy's reinforcements coming after him. However, as the white fog gradually dissipated, Lin Jin was startled to find his surroundings changing. Their surroundings were still covered in clouds and mist, and there was a towering gate in front of them. It was 30 meters tall and looked majestic. Turning around, Lin Jin saw that Hu Yuzhen was still locked in a fight with the lion monster. White Ape and Zombie Cthulhu had also entered while Xiaohua perched on Lin Jin's shoulder, looking wary. What is this place? Lin Jin was stunned. His first thought was that this was similar to the nebula barrier. Someone had used a supernatural spell to change the weather within a certain range. However, Lin Jin had a deep understanding of this spell, so he knew that this was definitely not the nebula barrier. It was as if they had been teleported to another place. Although Lin Jin was surprised and curious, he managed to keep his composure. Given the current situation, he could only observe for now. It wasn't wise to act rashly before he had a clear grasp of the situation. On the other side, the lion demon was already defeated. Hu Yuzhen held his head down and beat him. His mighty weapon was nowhere to be seen. Unable to defeat her, unable to get up, the lion demon grumbled in anger. However, at that moment, a sharp blade energy shot through the air, heading straight for Hu Yuzhen. The blade energy was so fast that Lin Jin couldn't react in time. Hu Yuzhen, on the other hand, was strong enough to evade it immediately. However, this also allowed the lion demon to escape. What kind of monster is this? How dare you come here and behave atrociously? With a scoff, another blade energy came slashing down. This time, the blade energy seemed to be imbued with the power of the heavens. Even if Hu Yuzhen was strong enough, she had nowhere to hide from this attack. Due to the previous attack, Lin Jin reacted quickly this time. Hu Yuzhen was his target for demon slaying, so how could he allow someone else to slay her first? Invoking a spell, Xiaohua leaped up from his back. Then, cold air surged, forming a dome of ice. Although it couldn't stop the sword energy, it was able to delay it enough for Hu Yuzhen to escape. Even so, the blade energy managed to cut off a strand of Hu Yuzhen's hair. Hu Yuzhen paled in fear. As the blade energy swept down, it cut a ravine in the clouds beneath her feet. From this, one could tell how powerful this attack was. Hu Yuzhen was scared out of her wits. She hid behind Lin Jin as if she was running for her life. Perhaps to her, only a similarly strong Lin Jin could protect her now that they were facing a strong opponent. After all, if Lin Jin hadn't intervened earlier, she would have been slain. Lin Jin wasn't looking at Hu Yuzhen or the lion demon. Instead, he was looking up at the sky. Hu Yuzhen looked up too, but she couldn't see anything. She couldn't see, but Lin Jin could. Thousands of feet up in the sky, there seemed to be a dense array of characters faintly discernible, swaying like wild geese. It was a pity that even Lin Jin couldn't see it clearly. But as expected, the blade energy earlier came from the dense array of characters in the sky. No more blade energy came down, but even so, Hu Yuzhen was scared out of her wits. For a split second she thought she was going to die. Enraged, the lion demon got up and started cursing. Lin Jin remained calm as he saluted the man. "General Lion, I'm Lin Jin. I heard that General Lion wanted to drag us into the painting world. May I ask, is this the painting world?" Although General Lion was infuriated by Hu Yuzhen's attack earlier, he couldn't be blamed for being rude. Although he was initially annoyed after seeing Lin Jin's behavior, he couldn't hold back his anger. Noticing Lin Jin's extraordinary bearing, General Lion gave it some thought and decided not to throw a tantrum. Still, he wasn't in a good mood either. "You and this tiger demon are birds of a feather flock together. But since you've asked, I'll tell you. That's right, this is the painting world, created by an ancient immortal. I am the gatekeeper appointed by the immortal. If you dare to behave atrociously here, you will be cut down by the immortal's blade energy and die without a complete corpse. The lion demon looked smug as if he had a powerful backer. At this, Lin Jin's heart skipped a beat. Although he was shocked, he was mostly happy. Since the immortal path had fallen, there shouldn't be any immortals left in this world. To think that he would hear traces of an immortal here. More importantly, this place was so mysterious and there was even that lightning blade energy earlier. No matter how he looked at it, it was undoubtedly the work of an immortal. With this, wouldn't he be able to see the true face of an immortal? As a reincarnated human, Lin Jin naturally hoped to learn some real skills. If there was an immortal here, it would be great if he could learn from them. Of course, he had to explain himself lest the immortal cut him down with the blade energy. Lin Jin smiled and said, "The conflict earlier was just a misunderstanding. This miss who wasn't really here to cause trouble. As for me, I'm willing to apologize to General Lion on her behalf." Alternatively, Lin Jin could apologize to the immortal in person. In Lin Jin's mind, an immortal must have a profound cultivation level and a transcendent state of mind. If Lin Jin apologized sincerely, the immortal wouldn't blame him. Moreover, Lin Jin could only admit defeat now. Apologizing was the only way out. Of course, if the immortal here wanted to vanquish the demon and kill Hu Yuzhen, Lin Jin wouldn't be able to stop him. At most, he would just leave the demon to the immortal and leave it to him. It was also for this reason that Lin Jin was acting so nonchalant. Lin Jin had considered the worst-case scenario, and that was to hide in the visitation hall. He believed that with the Museum of Deadly Beasts, even a true immortal wouldn't be able to detect him. Chapter 280. After Lin Jin apologized, General Lion didn't know how to respond. This man was clearly amenable to persuasion but not coercion. Moreover, General Lion had no way of summoning the ancient immortal. Ever since he started guarding this door, he had never seen the ancient immortal who created this place. Even before this, General Lion had only heard the immortal's voice but had never seen him in person. The previously arrogant Hu Yuzhen wasn't afraid of General Lion, but the sword energy that descended from the sky terrified her. She didn't dare to make a sound and remained as docile as a cat. General Lion had seen everything clearly. Lin Jin's pet beast stirred up a cold gust of wind and created a dome of ice out of thin air. Although it didn't manage to block the ancient immortal's sword energy, it did at least delay it for a moment. From this, General Lion could tell that this man wasn't as simple as he seemed. Since General Lion had apologized, shouldn't General Lion go with the flow and not pursue the matter of the tigress' wrongdoings? I can see that this Mr. Lin has an extraordinary bearing, and it just so happens that I have to bring in some mortals here every year to comprehend the ancient immortal arts. Since Mr. Lin has come this year, I won't be derelict in my duties. Mr. Lin, you can enter and have a look around. Also, Tigress, didn't you want to come in a long time ago? This time, I'll give Mr. Lin face and allow you to come along. But if you dare to behave atrociously again, the next time the immortal's sword chi comes, I will slay you. At this, Lin Jin knew that the matter had been resolved. He immediately went over to thank General Lion. General Lion was obviously a prideful person, so Lin Jin just had to give him face. Moreover, Lin Jin didn't sense any malevolent aura from General Lion. This proved that this lion monster had indeed been enlightened and restrained by someone. According to ancient records, he was an immortal beast reared by an immortal. That was what it meant. Now that General Lion was willing to let Lin Jin in, that was for the best. As for the tiger demon, Hu Yuzhen, she kept quiet as she followed Lin Jin inside with her head lowered. Of course, there was still a hint of excitement on her face. Once they were some distance away from General Lion, she whispered, "Mr. Lin, I've long heard that there's an incredible immortal's cave here. But I've been here a few times, but this lion wouldn't let me in. If it weren't for you, Mr. Lin, I wouldn't have been able to enter and I would have been killed by the immortal. I'll never forget how you've saved my life." After saying that, he bowed with sincerity. "It's good that you know. Lin Jin nodded before asking, "How much do you know about this place?" Hu Yuzhen immediately said, "I heard that there was a family here who obtained the fourth scroll of the Beastmaster, but in the end, they met with misfortune and died." Later on, it was said that the fourth scroll of the Beastmaster would only appear at a specific time of the year, so every year, there would be some people coming here, but those who came would mysteriously disappear. But I know about this matter, those people were swept away by the lion demon's white mist, so they should be here. I wanted to come in long ago, but the lion wouldn't let me. This time, I couldn't help but fight with it. Lin Jin mused. You only fought me because you knew I would teach you the Dharma body technique, right? Speaking of which, this tiger monster was smart enough to know when to speak. After all, it was a monster that had lived for hundreds of years and even turned into a demon. If it didn't have this mindset, it wouldn't have lived for so long. As they spoke, there was a flight of stairs leading downwards. As they descended, the mist dissipated and they saw a tall mountain peak. It was as flat as a river, and there was a large hall in the middle. Many silhouettes could be seen on the ground in front of the hall. Overall, it looked like a painting. Lin Jin looked up again, but he couldn't see the fleeting words floating in the sky. "Master Lin, there are quite a lot of people down there," White Ape suddenly said. Hu Yuzhen was stunned. She looked at White Ape from head to toe, astonished. She was a tiger monster that had been cultivating for hundreds of years, so she had a good eye for things. This White Ape had a good foundation, but he hadn't been cultivating for long, probably less than a year. To be able to cultivate his hyoid bone and speak human language in such a short time was ridiculous. If she wasn't mistaken, this White Ape knew transformation skills too. What she saw now was definitely not his true form. Thinking back to when she was cultivating at Mount Songliang, it took her at least 60 years to reach this White Ape's level. Comparing the two, the difference was huge. It was impossible for White Ape to have such talent on his own. This could only mean that this Mr. Lin was skilled. Why didn't I meet a master like him when I was cultivating back then? Hu Yuzhen sighed inwardly. But when she remembered that this Mr. Lin was going to give her Dharma body cultivation, Hu Yuzhen cheered up. Naturally, she became even more respectful towards Lin Jin. By the time they reached the platform below, the clouds behind them had dissipated. There were no longer any cloud stairs. Hu Yuzhen immediately said, "This is bad. That lion has cut off our path of retreat." Lin Jin had the same thought as well. However, he knew that this might not have been the lion monster's doing. It was most likely a restriction spell of this place. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they come. There was no point in panicking now. There were quite a number of people and pet beasts on the empty platform. However, most of them were either sitting cross-legged or pacing back and forth. Their brows were furrowed as if they were deep in thought. Even when Lin Jin's group arrived, the people on the square didn't seem to care. Lin Jin was curious, but there was someone else who was even more curious. Hu Yuzhen couldn't help but step forward to ask. The person being questioned was a middle-aged man. His clothes were tattered and his hair was disheveled. Who knew how long it had been since he took care of himself? He was clearly reluctant to be stopped by Hu Yuzhen. "What are we doing?" "We're studying the Beastmaster 4th scroll, of course. If you want to study it, go ahead and take a look at the stone tablet ahead. Don't disturb me." Having said that, he lowered his head in deep thought. Hu Yuzhen's eyes darkened. If it weren't for Lin Jin, she might have swallowed this insolent fool whole. But with Lin Jin around, she didn't have the courage to do so. "Let's go over and take a look." Lin Jin noticed a stone tablet erected in front of the hall. As he got closer, Lin Jin's brows twitched. This stone tablet had all the contents of the Beastmaster Scroll 1 to 3. The Beastmaster Scroll was a blood contract cultivation technique that was difficult to obtain in the outside world. Who knew it would be so casually engraved on a stone tablet here? Not only that, But after the Beastmaster third scroll, the words Beastmaster fourth scroll were written. However, the words after the fourth scroll were more obscure and there were many strange symbols, making it difficult to decipher their true meaning. But just by looking at the parts that he could understand, Lin Jin was certain that this Beastmaster fourth scroll was no ordinary scroll. Lin Jin understood now. It was no wonder everyone here was so obsessed. They were all trying to study the Beastmaster fourth scroll. As he read, Lin Jin couldn't feel the flow of time around him anymore. All he wanted to do was understand the secrets of the Beastmaster fourth scroll. There was even a voice in his mind that if he could understand the Beastmaster fourth scroll, he would become extremely powerful. And so, Lin Jin lowered his head in thought. But at that moment, a bell rang in the museum, startling Lin Jin out of his reverie. Chapter 281. In an instant, Lin Jin snapped out of his strange thoughts and the voices around him returned. His eyes and ears were clear and he understood something. He stopped looking at the stone tablet. Amazing, I almost fell for it. Lin Jin mused. He looked at the people around him. Forget them, even Lin Jin himself had fallen for the Beastmaster fourth scroll after staring at it for a while. If the Museum of Deadly Beasts hadn't rung the alarm bell to wake him up, he would have fallen into this strange obsession just like everyone else. No doubt, someone had cast a spell on the stone tablet. Lin Jin glanced at Hu Yuzhen. She was just like him. Her eyes were fixated on the stone tablet, and at other times, she would lower her head in thought. Lin Jin knew that even this demon had fallen for it. Not to mention White Ape. The only ones who weren't affected by the stone tablet were the zombie Cthulhu, who was too afraid to come out from the sarcophagus, and Xiaohua. Xiaohua had a Dharma body with clear eyes, so the stone tablet couldn't affect him. Hence, even if the Museum of Deadly Beasts hadn't rung the alarm bell, Xiaohua would have tried to wake Lin Jin up once he realized he was in trouble. However, when he recalled the impatient look of the person who was woken up by Hu Yuzhen, Lin Jin figured that he wouldn't wake up no matter how hard he tried. After some thought, Lin Jin pricked White Ape and Hu Yuzhen's acupoints with his silver needles. Both of them snapped out of their daze and looked around in confusion. White Ape didn't know what was going on, but Hu Yuzhen, who had lived for hundreds of years, knew that she had fallen for it too. Her cheeks immediately reddened. Then, she went over to thank Lin Jin. She knew it was Lin Jin who had helped her wake up from the spell. Stop looking at the stone tablet. Someone has cast a spell on it, Lin Jin reminded her. Hu Yuzhen nodded quickly. She didn't dare to be careless now and was thankful that she met Lin Jin. Otherwise, it would be embarrassing if she was controlled by a spell. After all, she was an old monster who had cultivated for hundreds of years. It must be that lion's doing, Hu Yuzhen mumbled. Lin Jin shook his head. That General Lion probably isn't that capable. After all, this stone tablet can even bewitch you. It must be the work of an immortal. Hu Yuzhen naturally knew that she only said those words to vent the dissatisfaction in her heart. Taking another look at the crowd in the plaza, Lin Jin realized that these people were the ones who had been tricked into coming here by those rumors. Among them, there were experts while there were just average ones. But regardless of their cultivation level, they were all bewitched by the stone tablet's spell. However, Lin Jin couldn't figure out why the immortal who created this place would do such a thing. Furthermore, was the Beastmaster fourth scroll real or fake? Lin Jin looked at the stone tablet again. He wasn't being careless, but he was confident that if he was hit by another spell, he would have the Museum of Deadly Beasts to back him up. The reason why Lin Jin looked at it again was because he wanted to verify the authenticity of the Beastmaster fourth scroll. But this time, Lin Jin was stunned. The Beastmaster fourth scroll on the stone tablet no longer had those strange symbols. It was now a complete cultivation manual. After reading through it, Lin Jin could tell that this was a genuine blood contract cultivation. After some thought, Lin Jin sat down cross-legged and had Hu Yuzhen wait for him. Then, he began cultivating according to the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll. In order to cultivate the Beastmaster Scroll, one had to be at least on the fifth realm of their blood contract. It just so happened that Lin Jin had achieved this realm in the royal capital. Since that was the case, he might as well cultivate this rare Beastmaster Fourth Scroll. It wasn't that Lin Jin didn't want to memorize it and cultivate it when he got back. But after reciting it twice, he realized that he couldn't remember it clearly. With Lin Jin's current abilities, this was impossible. Someone must have cast another layer of spell on this cultivation manual. Although Lin Jin had never tried copying it, he figured that it wouldn't work. Through his spiritual eye, Lin Jin could tell that there were more than 2 types of restrictive spells on the stone tablet. Since that was the case, why bother trying it out? He might as well just cultivate here. White Ape obviously had no objections. He put down the coffin and sat down to look around. Although Hu Yuzhen was confused, she didn't dare to ask too many questions since this was the work of an expert. So, she waited patiently. There was no sun or moon in this mystical place. From Hu Yuzhen's perspective, more than 20 hours had passed, but the sky was still the same as before. Nothing seemed to have changed. It was truly mystical. As a demon who had been cultivating for hundreds of years, these 20 hours didn't matter to Hu Yuzhen. She was currently cultivating as well. Another 20 hours had passed. Lin Jin suddenly opened his eyes, a hint of joy in his gaze. Xiao Hua! Lin Jin called out. Xiao Hua, who had been standing guard, immediately came forward. Lin Jin invoked a spell with both hands and patted Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua instantly transformed into 2 balls of spirit energy, ice and fire. They coiled around Lin Jin's arm and melted into his flesh. This startled White Ape so much that he immediately jumped up. Hu Yuzhen glanced over as well. She knew that after a blood contract cultivator reached the 5th realm, they could use the Beastmaster Scroll to fuse with their pet beast. This way, they could use their pet beast's abilities. She had seen many powerful blood contract cultivators who took this path. Some of them were even people she didn't dare to provoke. To put it simply, the Beastmaster Scroll depended on the strength of the pet beast. If the pet beast was strong, the blood contract cultivator would be powerful. As for Mr. Lin, his blood contract pet beast was a fire wolf with a yin-yang dharma body. Naturally, he could also borrow the fire wolf's supernatural powers, so it was only natural that he would be able to use the fire wolf's supernatural abilities. Hu Yuzhen had seen many blood contract cultivators' Beastmaster scrolls as well. But now, she noticed that the fire wolf tattoo on Lin Jin's arm was emitting a fire and ice aura, carrying with it an indescribable aura. She had never seen something like this before. Could it be the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll? Hu Yuzhen was a knowledgeable person. Blood contract cultivators in this world only cultivated the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd scroll. The 4th scroll was only a legend and no one had ever succeeded in cultivating it. However, Hu Yuzhen was a monster and the Beastmaster Scroll was only for blood contract cultivators. It had nothing to do with her, so she was only mildly surprised before letting it go. Little did she know how shocked Lin Jin was right now. The Beastmaster Fourth Scroll is amazing. Back at Maple City's Friar Association, Lin Jin had studied the Beastmaster Scroll. However, the association only had Beastmaster Scroll 1 and 2. In comparison, these 2 scrolls paled in comparison to Volume 4. The difference was like night and day. To put it simply, the Beastmaster First Scroll was only a half-finished product. After fusing with his pet, they had to separate for a period of 3 days. During this period, they couldn't fuse again and the power they could unleash wouldn't be fully unleashed. The second scroll was slightly better, but only by a small margin. However, with the 4th scroll Lin Jin was cultivating, the human and pet could never separate. Not only could they unleash 120% of their powers, but they could also nourish each other and cultivate together. Although Lin Jin had never read the Beastmaster third scroll, it was definitely weaker than the fourth scroll. It was fate that he was able to cultivate these 4 scrolls. When Lin Jin got up, Xiaohua was nowhere to be seen. That was because Xiaohua had become one with Lin Jin, the blood contract owner. Just like Lu Bin, he had become one with his Cloud Sea Scorpion. Looking at the stone tablet again, Lin Jin was shocked to find that the place where the Beastmaster fourth scroll was carved had been replaced with a line of smaller words. After learning this cultivation method, you can use the incense ash from the hall's censer to touch it between your brows. Silently chant "Go, go," and you will be able to jump out of this world. Chapter 282. Lin Jin's eyes lit up, musing that this was the work of an immortal. Could immortals really exist in this world? Lin Jin had Hu Yuzhen take a look at the stone tablet. The moment she glanced at it, she was once again controlled by the spell. Fortunately, Lin Jin managed to wake her up in time. When he asked her what was written on the Beastmaster fourth scroll, she told him it was an incomprehensible incantation. Lin Jin knew that he was the only one who could see the method of escape. In other words, only those who had successfully cultivated the Beastmaster fourth scroll would be able to see the method of escape. As for the people in the plaza, they were still trapped in the spell. Oblivious to their own confusion, they were still painstakingly trying to understand the method, not knowing when it would end. However, Lin Jin dared not be a busybody. Since someone with supernatural powers had set up such a mysterious place, there must be a reason for it. If Lin Jin got pregnant and met someone with a bad temper, that person might just destroy him in minutes. Lin Jin knew his own capabilities. He could fight an opponent like the old dragon, but against an even more mysterious immortal, he would only be asking for trouble. At least not now. Now that he knew how to leave, Lin Jin wasn't in a hurry. He walked around the plaza and noticed that there were at least 50 people here. This must have been the result of years of accumulation. However, there was no food or water here. Even if one's cultivation was successful, they couldn't go without food and water. Even if it was for a short period of time, 3 to 5 years later, they would still die of hunger or thirst, no matter how strong they were. However, other than being unkempt and disheveled, none of the people in the plaza seemed to be dying of hunger or thirst. Lin Jin didn't know the specific reason, but he could only say that it was one of the mysteries of this place. Lin Jin began to wander around the plaza. The main hall was obviously Lin Jin's main target. However, there seemed to be an invisible barrier around the hall that prevented him from getting close. After one failed attempt, Lin Jin gave up. If he triggered some restrictive spell, he would be asking for trouble. What Lin Jin was most curious about now was the word "Great Goose" in the sky. However, it was a little high up and Lin Jin didn't know how to fly, so he couldn't get up. However, Lin Jin did discover something else in the plaza. He found a stone slab at the cloud staircase they came down from. The stone slab was engraved with extremely small characters. Because it was in a remote location, almost no one noticed it. In other words, everyone else was confused by the spell on the stone slab. Even if they walked over, they wouldn't notice it. Lin Jin lowered his head to take a closer look. The words "cloud treading" were written at the very front. It was another cultivation technique. Lin Jin chuckled and sat down cross-legged to study it. Curious, Hu Yuzhen came over as well. But after a long while, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She asked Lin Jin what he was looking at because there was nothing on the stone slab. Lin Jin looked up at Hu Yuzhen in surprise, but he didn't explain. It was clear that there was a restriction on it. He could see it because he had cultivated the Beastmaster fourth scroll, or maybe it was because of something else. Lin Jin wasn't too sure, but he had a rough idea of what to do. The immortal who created this place did not set up these restrictions to harm people. For example, the restrictions on the stone steel were meant to free people from their obsession and confusion, and to help them improve their cultivation. Only in this way could one obtain the correct method. Otherwise, if someone wanted to harm people, they could just send out a few sword energies and everyone here would be dead. It was the same with this cloud treading. It was meant for those who were determined to learn it. Otherwise, even if they mastered the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll, they might just leave. Only those who were meticulous and patient would return to investigate and find the stone slab with the cultivation technique engraved on it. As Lin Jin studied the cloud treading technique, he realized that it was much more difficult than the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll. The Beastmaster Fourth Scroll only required a Fifth Realm blood contract to cultivate, but this cloud treading wasn't the case. Even with Lin Jin's current cultivation level, studying it took a lot of effort. After studying it for several hours, he only managed to scratch the surface of the technique. Lin Jin knew that this was a rare opportunity. It wasn't easy for him to come here, so he couldn't leave just like that. Hence, he decided to put everything else aside for now. Another 20 or so hours passed. While Lin Jin was concentrating, there was a sudden movement behind him. The next instant, a faint door appeared. This sudden change startled Hu Yuzhen. She immediately got up and took a few steps back, looking wary. White Ape and Zombie Cthulhu, on the other hand, were calm. They had seen this before. The visitation hall opened. Lin Jin was stunned. For the first time, he didn't want to go. After all, this was a critical juncture. But Lin Jin knew that no matter what, he had to go. Thinking of this, he said to Hu Yuzhen, "Wait here." Then, in a flash, he disappeared into the door. Hu Yuzhen's scalp tingled at the sight of this. It was only now that Hu Yuzhen realized how terrifying this Mr. Lin truly was. To be able to travel between realms was something only a true immortal could do. Hu Yuzhen was so shocked that she almost prostrated herself in worship. Let's talk about Lin Jin. After entering the visitation hall, he put on his mask and pushed the door open. Inside, everyone had been waiting for a long time. However, before they could speak, Lin Jin asked, "Is there anything urgent?" He Ching, Black Crow, and the others shook their heads. While they didn't have anything urgent, they had plenty of other things like asking for pointers or expressing their gratitude. He Ching expressed her gratitude, while Madame Ghostchild wanted to ask about Zombie Cthulhu on Coffin Man's behalf. However, seeing as they didn't have anything urgent, Lin Jin simply said, "If there's nothing urgent, please help yourselves. I still have other matters to attend to, so I'll be taking my leave." Having said that, Lin Jin turned and left, leaving the dumbfounded crowd behind. Seeing the curator leave, it took the visitors a long time to snap out of their daze. "Everyone, when have you ever seen the curator like this?" Old Tian was the most flustered of them all. He had wanted to ask the curator for help, but before he could say anything, the curator had already left. His bandit stronghold was in chaos, not because of external enemies, but because of internal strife. His former brothers had turned against each other. Be it fear or old grudges, old Tian almost died in the hands of his own brothers. If he hadn't stepped into the visitation hall at the right time, he might have been captured. It could be said that old Tian was now on the brink of death. However, the curator had something to attend to and left. Now, old Tian couldn't hold it in anymore. Without the curator around, he could only seek help from others and see if they had any tricks up their sleeves. Throwing caution to the wind, old Tian bowed and asked for help. Compared to his life, he didn't mind losing face. The others had noticed something off about old Tian's expression earlier. Now that they saw him bowing and asking for help, they finally understood what was going on. "I see. Your sworn brothers are afraid of you, so they suddenly attacked you. Speaking of which, old Tian also has a rank 3 pet beast. Why is he so pathetic?" Chapter 283. Yuzhou was the first to speak. He was the most level-headed and didn't hold any grudges against old Tian. Moreover, the other party was sincerely asking for help. Since they were all in the visitation hall, it wasn't a big deal to help. At this, old Tian hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "Old Yi, you can't blame me for this. They were the ones who poisoned my pet beast. Look, my Tyrannosaurus was unconscious when it came in, so I was too embarrassed to say anything." The group looked over. Sure enough, old Tian's rank 3 Tyrannosaurus had been unconscious ever since. They thought it was sleepy, but it turned out it was poisoned. "Let me take a look for you." Yiyujo went over to check on the Tyrannosaurus. The others came over as well. Old Tian had been doing well recently and Curator had accepted him, so they had to help as much as they could. Otherwise, if Curator were to ask about it, it would be hard to explain. Old Tian thanked them profusely. However, Yiyujo's understanding of pet beasts was limited. After a closer look, the Tyrannosaurus couldn't even open its eyes and remained motionless, sleeping soundly. "This is a little difficult." Yiyujo was embarrassed to say that he didn't have a solution, so he could only look at the others. He had already met them several times, so he was well aware of the capabilities of these visitors. Leaving He-Ching aside, Black Crow didn't know much about pet beasts either. Ghost Baby was strong, but she was clearly unprofessional when it came to beast appraising. On the other hand, Jiang Ziki had been keeping a low profile, but he was actually very knowledgeable, especially when it came to herbs. Hence, Yiyujo turned to Jiang Ziki and said, "Old Jiang, take a look?" Jiang Ziki didn't decline. He nodded and went forward to open the Tyrannosaurus's mouth to take a sniff before nodding thoughtfully. Old Tian looked at Jiang Ziki expectantly. The latter smiled. "It's not a big deal. It's just a type of herb that can numb pet beasts. I used to use it often, so I'm quite familiar with it. If Curator was here, he could probably solve this easily, but since he's not here, I'll have to show you my incompetence." Having said that, Jiang Ziki took out a medicine bag from his pocket. There were many smaller packets inside, and once they were opened, a strong medicinal smell wafted out. They couldn't tell what the smell was. Some were fragrant while others were pungent. Jiang Ziki took out one of the packets and then a gourd. Soaking the medicine in, he had someone pry open the Tyrannosaurus's mouth and tossed the packet inside. "All right, he'll wake up in a while," Jiang Ziki said. Seeing this, old Tian hurriedly thanked him. Putting everything else aside, at least his pet beast would wake up and be able to fight back. That way, he wouldn't be completely defenseless. Even so, he was sure to face a fierce battle once he got out. Old Tian was well aware of this. He-Ching suddenly asked, "Old Tian, even if your pet beast wakes up, can you defeat those people?" Old Tian was extremely grateful. If He-Ching had not spoken up, he would have been too embarrassed to do so. At this time, old Tian took advantage of the situation and immediately said, "Everyone, I can't fight 4 hands with 2 fists. Even if the Tyrannosaurus Rex wakes up, it will be a fierce battle when we get out. If I can't win, I might not be able to come next time." As he spoke, a sad look appeared on his face. "It's a pity that we can't enter your door. Otherwise we could go out and help you," Yiyujo said. This was the truth. The doors in the visitation hall were only open to specific visitors. Other visitors couldn't enter other people's doors. Everyone knew this. Then Black Crow asked, "Old Tian, where's the evaluation report Curator gave you? Isn't there any evolution method in there?" "There is, but the method of advancement is a little difficult." Old Tian quickly took out the evaluation report Curator gave him. He had always treated this man's work as a treasure and studied it after he returned. However, before he could improve his pet beast's strength, he was betrayed by his brother. At the thought of this, old Tian's chest tightened. If he hadn't become a visitor of the visitation hall, he would have been dead for sure after this betrayal. Now, he showed the evaluation report to everyone, still holding on to a glimmer of hope. The evaluation report was written in great detail, especially the evolution method. However, The items required for the Tyrannosaurus Rex's evolution weren't easy to find. For example, some pills and spirit crystals weren't easily obtainable by the average person. However, these people in the visitation hall were clearly no ordinary people. Many of them carried valuable items with them. Initially, they planned to offer them to Curator to increase their favorability, but the Curator clearly had something important to attend to, so they didn't offer anything. Now that old Tian was in trouble, they might as well lend him a hand. Curator would surely be happy when he found out about this. Perhaps this would be even more effective than giving them to him directly. Black Crow and Ghost Baby looked at each other, and each took out something for old Tian. Old Tian's jaw dropped at the sight of it, overwhelmed with excitement. It was a high-quality blood energy stone and several precious herbs. According to Curator's evaluation report, your Tyrannosaurus needs to replenish its blood energy before it can evolve. This blood energy stone will definitely be useful. Black Crow was generous. Old Tian rubbed his hands together in excitement, but Black Crow's next words were, "I'll lend it to you for now. Remember to return it." That was true. A high-quality blood energy stone was so precious that it couldn't be bought with money. It was impossible to just give it to old Tian just like that. Giving it to the Curator would make more sense, but Black Crow knew the Curator's personality. If he found out that they were standing idly by during old Tian's time of need, the Curator would surely be displeased. Hence, they had to help, but not for free. Old Tian snapped out of his daze and quickly nodded. "Don't worry. Once I survive this, I'll definitely return the favor." "Alright." Black Crow was generous enough to give the blood energy stone to old Tian. Next, they had to feed the blood energy stone to the rank 3 Tyrannosaurus. Then, they had to follow the evolution method described in the evaluation report. When the Tyrannosaurus's blood energy reached its peak and its eyes turned bloodshot, they would then use spirit energy to hit 3 of the Tyrannosaurus's acupoints. That way, there would be a chance for it to evolve. The Curator's method would definitely work, and no one doubted it. After eating the blood energy stone, the rank 3 Tyrannosaurus woke up and started to feel restless. Under the influence of the blood energy stone, the Tyrannosaurus's body rippled with a layer of blood energy. Not only that, its muscles swelled up, emitting strange noises. Some parts of its skin even burst. The Tyrannosaurus roared in pain. Old Tian could sense the pain the Tyrannosaurus was feeling through their blood contract. He was also anxious. After all, he couldn't tell if the situation was good or bad. At this moment, he could only look at the others as though he was begging for help. However, Black Crow and the others didn't know either. Seeing old Tian look over, Black Crow thought for a moment but didn't know what to say. He could only look to Yiyujo. In terms of knowledge, Yiyujo was the only one here who was slightly more knowledgeable. Being stared at, Yiyujo felt a little creeped out. He shook his head. "Don't look at me. I don't know if the situation is good or bad. Sigh, if only the Curator was here." At this moment, the Tyrannosaurus's body was bleeding and his eyes were starting to turn red. Chapter 284. Now's the time. Seeing this, Heya called out. Yiyujo nodded and immediately gathered spirit energy at his fingertip. When it came to finger techniques, Yiyujo was definitely the best among everyone present. Hence, it was the safest to have Yiyujo do the final acupoint pressing. It had to be said that Yiyujo's movements were extremely fast. His figure flashed and his 3 fingers were smooth and clean. Even Black Crow and Ghost Child gasped in admiration when they saw it. Yiyujo's finger technique was the best they had ever seen. In terms of finger techniques alone, Yiyujo could be ranked in the top 3 among the villainous experts. One could only imagine how amazing and powerful this finger technique was. After suffering 3 finger attacks, the Tyrannosaurus immediately stopped roaring and its body stopped expanding. However, its blood energy grew thicker before it retracted its aura. Blood vessels began to seep out from the torn flesh and soon, a large flesh cocoon was formed. That's right, He Ching exclaimed. She had been reading Old Tian's evaluation report the entire time. Old Tian, according to Curator's evaluation report, if your Tyrannosaurus evolves, there's a 30% chance that it will spin a cocoon on its own. Congratulations! Old Tian was rubbing his palms in excitement. He Ching was right. That was what the curator had said in the evaluation report. Could it be that his pet beast was about to evolve into rank 4? At this thought, Old Tian trembled in excitement. A rank 4 pet beast was something he had never dared to dream of before. If it really happened, he would definitely be able to sweep away all troubles. Those who betrayed him would surely be wiped out like dried twigs. This was indeed exciting. Old Tian's understanding of pet beasts was limited, so he couldn't figure out what was going on. However, according to Curator's evaluation report, this was indeed a good sign. But soon, the cocoon began to tremble as if the Tyrannosaurus inside was struggling. Old Tian had never thought of this situation and didn't know what to do. The others were confused too. Black Crow said, "Well, don't panic. It might just be a normal phenomenon." Just as he finished speaking, the flesh cocoon began to ooze blood. The situation was clearly not right, and Black Crow was momentarily at a loss for words. On the other hand, Madame Ghostchild and He Ching took a closer look at the evaluation report and their expressions changed. This is bad. Curator's evaluation report clearly states that if a cocoon is formed and the pet beast successfully evolves, it will split open on its own. It also states that if blood oozes out, it means that the pet beast has failed. If it fails, the pet beast will surely die. When Old Tian heard this, his face turned pale. He still had a rank 3 pet beast. If it failed to evolve and died, he would lose everything. Once he got out, he wouldn't even have a chance to fight back. At the thought of this, Old Tian's good mood was completely gone. And this was not just a matter of mood, it was a matter of life and death. Don't panic, don't panic. Perhaps noticing Old Tian's pale face and rapid breathing, He Ching added, Curator also mentioned in the evaluation report that if there are signs of bleeding, there is a way to remedy it. You can inject a rank 4 pet beast's blood into the cocoon. That way there's a chance of recovery. Old Tian hurried forward to flip through the evaluation report. Sure enough, there was this line of words. Although he had read through the report carefully back then, he couldn't remember the details clearly. Now that he saw it, realization dawned on him. Indeed, Curator had written such a solution in case of failure in the evaluation report. It was quite impressive, but since it was usually just a single sentence, he wouldn't have noticed it if he hadn't read it in detail. The others also went forward to flip through the report. It was just as He Ching said. If blood oozes out of the cocoon, one must immediately inject a rank 4 pet beast's blood into the cocoon. Both Yi Yuzhou and Black Crow knew that if Old Tian's pet beast died, they wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. For one, they were afraid that Curator would blame them for acting recklessly by helping Old Tian's pet beast evolve on their own accord. For two, they would feel bad about it. After all, they were the ones who volunteered to help Old Tian's pet beast evolve. If it failed and the pet beast died, they wouldn't be able to live with it. Old Tian, don't panic. Since Curator left such a sentence in the evaluation report, it means that there's a chance of failure. We have several rank 4 pet beasts here. If one doesn't work, we'll give you the blood of a few more rank 4 pet beasts. It'll be safer that way, Black Crow said, patting his chest. Madame Ghostchild nodded as well. Yi Yuzhou was even more duty-bound. I'll get the blood now. Soon, Black Crow, Madame Ghostchild, and Yi Yuzhou each took out their rank 4 pet beast's blood. The three of them were generous, using Madame Ghostchild's babyface spider's spikes to inject the blood of 3 different rank 4 pet beasts. Jiang Ziki wanted to say something, but he held it in. Coincidentally, He Ching noticed Jiang Ziki's expression, so she asked old Mr. Jiang if he had anything to say. Jiang Ziki whispered, "Curator's evaluation report mentioned that we need to use rank 4 pet beast's blood to make up for it, but he didn't use this much. I think Curator only needs one type of blood. But for something like this, having more is better than having less, right?" That last sentence sounded like he was answering his own question. It was obvious that Jiang Ziki wasn't sure about this either. He Qing remained optimistic. "Well, there shouldn't be a problem. If there was, Curator would have written it down." Jiang Ziki smiled and didn't say anything. He had a feeling that just like He Qing, Curator might not have written it down. But it was also possible that Curator only wanted to use one type of blood. "Let's hope I'm just being paranoid," Jiang Ziki mumbled to himself. Meanwhile, the flesh cocoon had been injected with 3 different types of rank 4 pet beast blood. Black Crow didn't say much as his thoughts were simple, and he didn't have much knowledge in this field. Madame Ghostchild was the same as well. Yiyujo was wondering if something would go wrong if all 3 types of rank 4 pet beast's blood were injected into the cocoon at the same time. Probably not. This method was given by Curator, which means Curator has already considered this situation. I don't have to think too much about it. I'm just making a fuss over nothing, Yiyujo mumbled to himself. At that moment, the flesh cocoon that had been injected with 3 types of blood stopped bleeding. It seemed to have entered a decent stage as it started pulsating rhythmically. "See? Isn't the crisis resolved?" Black Crow laughed heartily. Yiyujo breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that the crisis was resolved. It was good that it was resolved. Old Tian, who had been through a series of ups and downs, was now blushing slightly. However, he was still worried. After all, Curator wasn't around. Although the visitation hall guests were enthusiastic, they weren't Curator. Old Tian could only hope that everything would go smoothly and that there wouldn't be any more problems. Old Tian was even thinking that even if he couldn't evolve, he would at least be able to maintain his current strength and realm. At the very least, he wouldn't be a sitting duck once he left this place. Of course, it would be even better if he could evolve by luck. Chapter 285. On this side, Old Tian was praying to the gods and Buddha in his heart. On the other side, the others were also looking at the flesh cocoon warmly. But at this moment, something strange happened. The cocoon began to change color. Their eyes weren't deceiving them. It was changing color. One moment it changed color to red, the next moment it changed to green, the next moment it changed to black, and finally to blue. Every time it changed, the flesh cocoon would tremble. It was as if there was something inside that was wailing and struggling. This time, Old Tian's face was covered in sweat. His heart couldn't take it anymore. He fainted and fell to the ground. "Quick, pinch the philtrum," He Qing shouted. Yiyujo nodded. As an expert from the Friar Association, he didn't need to resort to such low-level methods to save someone. "Don't worry. I'll use my spiritual energy to guide his spirit Hui acupoint. He'll wake up immediately. Don't panic." Yiyujo moved swiftly, displaying the demeanor of an expert. With a telepathic finger, a flash of light appeared and Old Tian regained consciousness less than 2 seconds after he fainted. "Old Tian, don't worry. With me here, you won't faint," Yiyujo assured. Seeing that the cocoon was on the verge of breaking, Old Tian despaired. "Old Yi, why did you wake me up? You made me faint, you made me faint." Yiyujo was in an awkward position. It seemed like Old Tian didn't want to face reality. But given the current situation, they were out of options. Curator's evaluation report only mentioned this much and nothing else. They were at their wits' end. Black Crow walked over and patted Old Tian on the shoulder. "Old Tian, we're in the same visitation hall after all. I can't just watch you die. I'll give you one of the Black Falcon's feathers later. Take it and tell the people who are after you that if you die, I, Black Crow, will definitely go after them and kill them all. I doubt they'll have the guts to do so. Old Tian looked helpless. He wanted to say that if he died, what was the point of killing them? But since Black Crow had good intentions, he couldn't bring himself to say it. Admittedly, despite the number of experts in the visitation hall, when faced with a situation like Old Tian's, they were like distant waters that couldn't quench an immediate thirst. If Old Tian's pet beast was destroyed, Old Tian's trip back would be fraught with grim possibilities. Old Tian looked at the flesh cocoon that had started to ooze pus. He let out a long sigh as if he had thought things through. Everyone, I, Tian Bao, am just a nobody. I have no talent, no backing, and I've lived for more than 50 years without accomplishing anything of note. However, I'm lucky enough to be able to come to the visitation hall, get to know the curator, and get to know all of you. This is my, Tian Bao's, calamity. It's naturally good if I can avoid it, but if I can't, I won't blame the heavens or anyone else. I can only say that I've committed too many sins in the first half of my life, and this is retribution from the heavens. There's no need for everyone to avenge me. I, Tian Bao, am already very grateful for everyone's help before. At this moment, Old Tian stood up and bowed to them. It was as if he was saying goodbye. Even for He Qing, the little girl, Old Tian still bowed solemnly. As the saying goes, when a person is on the verge of death, they will comprehend many things. Now, Tian Bao was like this. He had thought things through. At this time, no matter how unwilling he was, what else could he do? Seeing Old Tian in such a state, the others did not feel good either. Meanwhile, He Qing was carefully reading through the evaluation report given by the curator, trying to find some clues. But alas, the evaluation report didn't mention anything about this situation. Meanwhile, Jiang Ziki and Yi Yuzhou exchanged glances as they both thought of a possibility. Perhaps they really had outsmarted themselves. The curator's evaluation report mentioned that they needed a rank 4 pet beast's blood, but it should only be one type. In their panic earlier, they put all 3 rank 4 pet beasts inside. Perhaps this was more harmful than beneficial. From a certain perspective, this was equivalent to them harming Old Tian's Tyrannosaurus. There was no need to mention the guilt they felt. However, at that moment, a Tyrannosaurus roar rang out. The flesh cocoon, which was about to dry up, suddenly exploded. In an instant, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The next instant, a large creature emerged from within. It was a strange-looking Tyrannosaurus with colorful scales of at least 4 different colors. Not only that, from the Tyrannosaurus's spine, from its head to its tail, there were layers of bone spikes of varying lengths. At a glance, it looked horrifying and tyrannical. And then there were the Tyrannosaurus's teeth. Even people like Yi Yuzhou, Black Crow, and Madame Ghostchild had never seen such a state. There were several layers of teeth. What kind of monster is this? Yi Yuzhou's eyes widened. Behind him, his cloud flood dragon was growing restless. Forget the flood dragon, even the black falcon and babyface spider were restless. If it were a rank 3 pet beast, they wouldn't have reacted this way. In other words, this mutated Tyrannosaurus was already a rank 4. Old Tian felt it the most. After all, the Tyrannosaurus was his pet beast with a blood contract. At this moment, he could clearly feel his pet beast's aura growing from nothing to an extremely powerful one. It was so powerful that he didn't even dare to imagine it would be like this. Rank 4. It really was a rank 4. Old Tian trembled in excitement as blood rushed to his head. Putting aside the fact that the Tyrannosaurus had undergone plastic surgery to look like this, a rank 4 aura couldn't be deceived. As long as it was a rank 4, what was so great about having a strange appearance? It didn't matter. Old Tian had been through a roller coaster ride. His head tilted to one side and he fainted again. But this time, he was all smiles. Black Crow, Yi Yuzhou, and the others woke Old Tian up again. After waking up, Old Tian bowed to them one by one. In just a short while, He had thanked them twice. Looks like curator's evaluation report is the best. This is an evolution from a rank 3 to a rank 4, and the few of us managed to do it. Without curator's evaluation report, this wouldn't have been possible. Yujo didn't dare to claim credit, so he pushed the credit to curator. No one objected to this. This was how it was. They had only done it according to curator's evaluation report. They didn't even know the intricacies behind it. How could a rank 4 pet beast's blood be used to complete the evolution? No one understood the intricacies behind it. In fact, they couldn't even comprehend the slightest bit of it. It was the same even for someone like Yujo. When it came to beast appraising, he could go up against a rank 1 beast appraiser, but compared to curator, the difference was like heaven and earth. That's good. That's good. Old Tian, now that you're back, you should be able to deal with the trouble, Black Crow said. Old Tian nodded. Of course. At that moment, Old Tian, who had been a yes-man and had not dared to speak loudly, suddenly seemed to have become a lot more resolute. Old Tian even exuded a murderous aura. After some thought, Yujo warned, Old Tian, although your pet beast evolved and became much stronger, your crisis is nothing now. I just want to tell you that curator doesn't like bloodthirsty people. At this, Old Tian's heart skipped a beat. The elation he had been feeling earlier fell away. But he knew that Yujo was saying this for his own good. Old Yi, I know that. Don't worry. Even if those people betrayed me, they were once my sworn brothers. As long as they repent and turn over a new leaf, I can let bygones be bygones. Even if they're stubborn, I'll give them a chance. I won't kill indiscriminately. When Old Tian finished, Yujo nodded. That's for the best. That's for the best. Chapter 286. Old Tian's crisis was finally averted. The visitation hall members had worked together and somehow managed to evolve the Tyrannosaurus using the curator's evaluation report. Old Tian's face was glowing. Of course, he was elated. Even though he was the blood contract owner, he had no idea what was going on with the Tyrannosaurus. Why did it have colorful scales? Why did it have a monstrous appearance? Sometimes, even he found it hard to control it. But none of this was a problem. More importantly, he now had a rank 4 pet beast. That was the most important thing. In this way, even in the continent where he was from, he, Tian Bao, would become a very important person. This was very normal. Any place that had a rank 4 beast was someone who could make the surrounding kingdoms tremble with a stomp of his foot. This was exhilarating. Old Tian was already looking forward to a bright future. Of course, he knew how all of this came about. His greatest reliance now might not be his rank 4 Tyrannosaurus, but the visitation hall. Only now did Old Tian realize how amazing the curator was. It was no wonder even existences like Black Crow, Ghost Child, and Old Yi were so respectful to the curator. Recalling his initial attitude, Old Tian wanted to slap himself. Fortunately, it wasn't too late for him to come to his senses. Now that Old Tian was casually chatting with them, they began discussing a problem. What could have made the curator so anxious that he left after just a brief greeting? This was something that had never happened before. Could the curator have encountered some danger? They immediately rejected this thought. To the visitation hall members, there was nothing in this world that could threaten the curator. They had absolute confidence in the curator. Hence, in the end, they couldn't come to a conclusion. Ghost Child didn't get any information about Zombie Cthulhu, and He Ching didn't convey her sister He Yu's gratitude. Of course, they had a lot to talk about, but they had nowhere to go. They could only wait for the next visitation hall to open. Meanwhile, after Lin Jin returned from the visitation hall, he encountered a strange incident. Lin Jin had come back in a hurry to study the mist carrier since he already had a rough idea of how to proceed. But to his surprise, not long after he sat down to study, he sensed something behind him. Turning around, he saw someone standing behind him. The other party must have just arrived. Lin Jin was confident in his perceptive abilities. Also, the visitation hall's steel door behind him hadn't completely disappeared. With this boost, Lin Jin could sense things more subtly. Clearly, this person wasn't one of those from the plaza. Lin Jin could tell that this person was highly skilled. Because other than Lin Jin, Hu Yuzhen didn't notice anything at all. Also, this person's attire was not ordinary. Generally speaking, it was filled with an ancient charm and seemed to be very extraordinary. However, it just so happened that he looked like an ordinary person. In fact, in terms of aura, he couldn't even compare to the group of people in the square. The more it was like this, the more wrong it was. At such a time, something so wrong must be dealt with seriously. Hence, Lin Jin stopped studying. Instead, he got up and looked at the person, ready to strike. If it was an enemy, Lin Jin was confident that he could retaliate immediately. Speaking of which, he had cultivated the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll and fused it with Xiao Hua's Yin-Yang Dharma body. He had yet to reveal his skills, so if this person was an enemy, he could use this opportunity to test his current strength. Only then did Hu Yuzhen, who had been standing respectfully beside him, notice something amiss. She quickly turned around, and when she saw the person, she immediately got up. Lin Jin waved at her, gesturing for her not to act rashly. Just then, the person chuckled and saluted. The spirit energy in the outside world has dried up and the path of immortality has fallen. Yet, to think that I would still be able to meet a fellow cultivator. How rare and precious. Since the person was being polite, Lin Jin couldn't possibly be impolite, so he returned the gesture. The person walked over with a smile. When he got closer, he glanced at Hu Yuzhen and shook his head. Fellow cultivator, why are you keeping a demon like him? Although his tone was calm, it was laced with murderous intent. Of course, this murderous intent wasn't directed at Lin Jin but at Hu Yuzhen. At that instant, Hu Yuzhen sensed extreme danger. This danger felt like a towering mountain pressing down on her, as if the sky was about to topple over. She couldn't even muster the strength to resist. Hu Yuzhen was no fool. She was a monster who had cultivated for hundreds of years and possessed superhuman intelligence. She knew full well that she was on the brink of death, and the saddest thing was that she didn't have the right to decide whether she lived or died. In other words, her own life and death had nothing to do with her. The only person who could save her was Mr. Lin. However, Hu Yuzhen didn't even dare to look at Mr. Lin. She could only stand there stiffly as if she would be struck by lightning if she moved even the slightest bit. Behind her, White Ape shrunk his head, not daring to move. As for the zombie Cthulhu in the coffin, he was just like a corpse, not making a single sound. The only one who was at ease here was Lin Jin. He could tell that this man in ancient robes had impressive skills and that his realm was unfathomable. However, since Lin Jin had decided to slay Hu Yuzhen's demon, he wouldn't allow anyone else to interfere. Moreover, if he gave in due to pressure, it would only be despicable. Keep it. I'll slay her demon. Lin Jin answered honestly. The man in ancient robes was stunned at this before he burst into laughter. Great, great. Since you're willing to do so, that's for the best. Following his laughter, that seemingly non-existent yet omnipresent murderous intent finally dissipated. Hu Yuzhen was drenched in sweat, feeling as if she had just narrowly escaped death. Her respect for Mr. Lin grew. At this moment the ancient robed man said, "Originally, I only had this remnant of my soul left in this magic treasure, the supreme mountain and river diagram. I just wanted some peace and quiet. If it wasn't for the fact that I saw Dao Friend using the spatial movement technique, I wouldn't have come out. Dao Friend, please don't laugh at me. This is the first time I've seen something like this." At this, Lin Jin immediately understood. The man was talking about the visitation hall. Only then did the faint image of the visitation hall's door behind Lin Jin slowly fade away like a mirage. Lin Jin didn't know how to explain this, so he smiled faintly and said, "Sorry for the disturbance." "Sigh, what disturbance? I'm happy." The man in ancient robes waved. "To be honest, this remnant of my soul doesn't have much time left. To be able to meet such an expert before I dissipate is already a blessing in disguise." Lin Jin blushed with shame at his words. The man in ancient robes had clearly misunderstood. The visitation hall door wasn't his supernatural power, but the museum of deadly beasts. But there was no way to explain this. Moreover, this misunderstanding was a good thing. Lin Jin could tell how powerful this man was, and from his words, he learned that the place he was in was called Unending Nature Painting. It was an artifact that belonged to this man in ancient robes. In a sense, this man in ancient robes was a legendary cultivator, the ancient immortal General Lion had mentioned. Hence, it was better for this misunderstanding to never be resolved. Otherwise, if this ancient immortal thought Lin Jin was messing with him, that would be terrible. Chapter 287. From their conversation, Lin Jin learned that this ancient immortal's name was Du Li, and he used to be a real immortal. However, ever since the fall of immortality, his physical body was destroyed. The only reason he was able to leave behind this remnant of his soul was because of the unending nature landscape. Otherwise, this remnant of his soul wouldn't have survived. This monster, General Lion, was actually a lion beast who accidentally stumbled into this nature landscape a long time ago. After receiving Du Li's telepathic guidance, he gained some skills. As for the people in the plaza, they were actually just Du Li's selfish motive. I'm the only one left from my lineage of immortality, so I was hoping to find some people to help me comprehend the sect's introductory cultivation method. It's a pity that no one has succeeded in all these years. Du Li's voice carried a hint of disappointment. Lin Jin said nothing. Inwardly, he mused. It's not like no one has succeeded. I've succeeded. However, Du Li clearly didn't think so because the other party had already placed him on the same level as him. Did immortals of the same level still need to comprehend introductory cultivation methods? Just one look and you'll know. Du Li was sighing while Lin Jin felt his heart palpitate as if he was sitting on pins and needles. He was now putting his acting skills on the line. However, when it came to introductory cultivation methods, they were referring to the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll. Lin Jin took this opportunity to ask around and found out that Du Li's lineage was a beast cultivator. It was fitting for the current situation. However, the fact that the powerful Beastmaster Fourth Scroll was only an introductory cultivation method was quite a blow to Lin Jin. Fortunately, Lin Jin wasn't foolish enough to compare the current situation to the era before the fall of immortality. After all, times had changed. Lin Jin also told Du Li about the situation outside. Du Li listened in silence. Indeed, times have changed and the cycle of eras has passed. Forget it, I've already profited from knowing this. Having said that, Du Li saluted Lin Jin. Brother Lin, I've actually shown myself today, because I have a favor to ask. Lin Jin replied, Senior Du, feel free to speak your mind. As long as it's within my power, Lin Jin will do his best. Du Li said, this remnant of my soul doesn't have much time left and will dissipate soon. When that time comes, I hope that fellow Taoist Lin can take care of my Supreme Mountain River painting. This painting is the ultimate treasure of my sect, and was personally passed down to me by the sect leader. I can't let it be without an owner, so I hope that fellow Taoist Lin can take care of it for me. This painting contains the cultivation manuals of my sect, and fellow Taoist Lin can take a look at them. I only hope that fellow Taoist Lin can find someone with a decent character to inherit the sect's magical treasure and not let this lineage end in my hands. It was obvious that Du Li had no other choice but to entrust this task to Lin Jin. As for the others, they either didn't trust him or didn't have the ability to do so. Perhaps Du Li was feeling a little displeased. Lin Jin could tell that too. However, just as Dooley had said, his remnant soul was about to completely dissipate, so he could only resort to desperate measures. Lin Jin had no choice but to nod and promise that he would find a successor to pass down this immortal sect. If that's the case, I'm counting on you. Dooley was overjoyed at this. He got up and bowed to Lin Jin solemnly, prompting Lin Jin to return the gesture. Just then, Lin Jin vaguely heard a commotion in the Museum of Deadly Beasts. He used his psychic power to investigate and found that it was coming from the newly constructed demon-slaying hall. At that moment, a black ray of light appeared in the demon-slaying hall. Then, that black ray of light turned into a small black jade demonic image that floated in the air. At the same time, the image of a sword appeared in the demon-slaying hall. The shadow of the sword was faintly discernible, exuding a sharp aura. Lin Jin was surprised to see this. With a turn of his mind, he entered the demon-slaying hall. The first thing he saw was the shadow of the sword, and Lin Jin immediately knew what it was. The demon-slaying sword. Born upon encountering demons, slaying demons upon sight. Slaying demons and turning them into jade. Jade suspended in the demon-slaying hall. When Lin Jin saw this sword, he felt a sense of connection with it. He knew that this must be one of the Museum of Deadly Beasts' remarkable supernatural powers. Then, Lin Jin turned to look at the black jade. What he saw shocked him even more. The demonic jade looked exactly like Dooley. It was as if a skilled craftsman had carved it according to Dooley's likeness. That was odd. Lin Jin used his psychic power to look at Dooley again and realized that his remnant soul was beginning to dissipate. At that moment, Lin Jin understood. The fall of immortals was something that happened 1,000 years ago, maybe even several millennia ago. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Dooley's remnant soul to exist for so long. Countless immortals had perished, and no matter how powerful his remnant soul was, it couldn't withstand the corrosion of time. Of course, his sect's unending nature landscape was the main reason. But there was another reason that Lin Jin only just realized. Because Dooley's remnant soul was so obsessed that it had been many years since he became a demon. Dooley's situation was similar to Dooley's. Now that Dooley had met Lin Jin and was entrusted with a task, Dooley's calamity was resolved. In the demon-slaying hall, this was considered a demon slaying. Hence, the demonic jade was born. With the demonic jade, the demon-slaying sword could be formed. This was the value of the demon-slaying hall. The demonic jade could nurture the sword. Only when there were enough demonic jades could this sword truly be born. Lin Jin was obviously looking forward to it. None of the items in the museum were ordinary. Once this sword was fully nurtured, Lin Jin had a feeling that his strength would improve tremendously. This wasn't written down in black and white. It was an epiphany. Dooley's remnant soul had dissipated. It was truly gone. Lin Jin knew this very well. Dooley was already at the end of his rope. Now that his obsession had crumbled, it was only natural for him to dissipate. This definitely wasn't a spell or a concealment technique. Lin Jin could tell from the demonic jade in the demon-slaying hall that Dooley was truly gone. But the problem was, there were still many things Lin Jin hadn't asked. Lin Jin had agreed to help Dooley look after the unending nature landscape, and that was his plan. But how was he supposed to store this thing? Lin Jin didn't have a clue. Of course, there was a possibility that Dooley didn't forget to tell Lin Jin. Instead, he purposely didn't mention it. Because to Dooley, since their cultivation levels were equal, Lin Jin must have a way to store this treasure. But the problem was, Lin Jin didn't have the ability to do so. Also, Lin Jin didn't mention what other treasures there were inside the unending nature landscape. He didn't even mention how to explore it. Helpless, Lin Jin could only sigh. He would have to take things slowly. Right now, it was better for him to reap whatever benefits he could. For example, he could learn the cloud treading skill first and worry about the rest later. Throughout the entire process, Hu Yuzhen had been standing nearby with her back bowed. She didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Now that the terrifying immortal was nowhere to be seen, Hu Yuzhen finally breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't know what to say when Lin Jin came over. Lin Jin, on the other hand, remained polite. "Wait for me a little longer." Yes. Hu Yuzhen was even more respectful now. Lin Jin noticed it too, but he didn't say anything. His mind was currently preoccupied with the cloud treading skill. Chapter 288. Perhaps it was because his mind was clear this time, or maybe it was because he was suddenly enlightened, but the process of learning cloud treading was exceptionally smooth. Several hours later, Lin Jin had gained a lot of insight. With a wave of his hand, a cloud descended from the sky. This cloud had no specific shape and could change at will. It came like a ribbon, converged into a round plate, and leaped like a nimble rabbit. However, the cloud was still a cloud. It only behaved this way because of Lin Jin's control. Lin Jin's understanding deepened. With a tug, another cloud descended from the sky. This time, after some thought, Lin Jin lifted his leg and stepped on it. With a single thought, the cloud rose 30 feet above the ground. But at that moment, Lin Jin dropped abruptly, almost falling. Insufficient spirit energy. Lin Jin immediately realized the problem. Although he had been cultivating, strengthening his veins, and expanding his spirit energy, his current spirit energy volume was more than 50 stones according to the Friar Association's calculations. It was at least twice as much as when he was in Maple City. Compared to other blood contract cultivators, it could be said that they had advanced by leaps and bounds. They were not the slightest bit inferior to those senior instructors. In fact, they might even be stronger. But compared to a true immortal cultivator, he was still a far cry. Take cloud treading for example. Using an ancient immortal's method, Lin Jin could only rise 3 feet into the air before he couldn't hold on any longer. Only Lin Jin knew how frustrating it was to learn a spell but not be able to use it. However, he was a smart man after all. He knew that spirit energy volume could only be improved step by step. Even if he could increase it to the terrifying level of 100 stones in the future, so what? 100 feet into the clouds? What use was that? He was still too far away from the real immortals described in the books. Insufficient spirit energy was equivalent to a family lacking in wealth. To survive, one had to be meticulous with their daily necessities. As the saying went, lavish meals are part of life, but simple meals are also part of life. Lin Jin felt that ancient immortal cultivators were just like wealthy families. They were used to living a good life, but once they became poor, they couldn't continue living. But even if they were poor, they had their ways. Lin Jin sat cross-legged in deep thought for a long time before an idea came to him. Then, he got up and took a step forward as if he was going up a flight of stairs. This time, clouds condensed beneath Lin Jin's feet like a small flight of stairs. Lin Jin managed to step on it just like that. Once the first step was taken, the second and third steps would be easy. Step by step, Lin Jin ascended the cloud stairs. Just like that, he ascended 1,000 feet into the sky. Hu Yuzhen gaped at this scene. Although she knew the wind manipulation technique, compared to Mr. Lin's current cloud staircase spontaneous birth, just in terms of pretentiousness and artistic conception, she was too far behind. They were both in public, but if you brought a gust of black wind with you, you wouldn't be as elegant and handsome as him. When Lin Jin told her to wait here, she didn't dare to move. Although Hu Yuzhen was curious as to what Mr. Lin was doing up there, she knew better than to ask questions that shouldn't be asked. She just had to stay put. Back to Lin Jin. He wasn't flying up to show off his newfound skill. Instead, he was using this opportunity to take a look at the word yen he noticed earlier. At this moment, he had already reached a sufficient height. When he looked up again, he saw a piece of writing in the distance. At this distance, Lin Jin could make out each word clearly. Divine Sword Scroll. Lin Jin read it aloud. Sure enough, Lin Jin had been curious as to where the descending sword energy came from. Now that he saw this divine sword scroll, he realized that the one who wanted to kill Hu Yuzhen wasn't Du Li. If it was Du Li, Lin Jin wouldn't have been able to stop him. Back then, the sword intent in this scroll had sensed Hu Yuzhen's demonic aura and was triggered to slash down the sword energy. It only stopped when Lin Jin tried to stop it. In other words, this sword scroll must have its own spirituality. If that was the case, Lin Jin couldn't act recklessly. Lin Jin stepped onto the cloud stairs and saluted. My name is Lin Jin. I sensed the sharpness of the sword energy earlier, so I came to take a look. No matter what, it wasn't wrong to be polite. Strangely enough, the sword scroll slowly drifted closer. The hundreds of words on the scroll were glowing. Lin Jin was stunned before understanding dawned on him. This sword scroll was agreeing to study the scroll and learn swordsmanship. Lin Jin smiled and saluted. Only then did he take a closer look. This time, Lin Jin went through it quickly. It wasn't that he was quick to comprehend the content, but because he was 1,000 feet in the air, and he was relying on the cloud stairs. Although he had used a trick to save a lot of spirit energy, it still consumed spirit energy. Hence, it was best to be quick. Otherwise, Lin Jin might fall off if he took too long. Fortunately, there weren't many words in the scroll, only a few hundred. After reading it a few times, Lin Jin memorized it. At his cultivation level, memorizing a few hundred words in a short time wasn't a problem. After about 100 breaths, Lin Jin memorized it and saluted the sword scroll before descending. Halfway down, Lin Jin's spirit energy was depleted. However, this height was nothing to him. Landing lightly, Lin Jin closed his eyes and read the sword scroll a few times to make sure he had memorized it. What an amazing sword scroll! Lin Jin couldn't help but exclaim when he opened his eyes again. This was a sentiment he felt. There weren't any moves or styles written on the scroll. It wasn't a swordsmanship at all. What was written was a seemingly mysterious sword intent. An average swordsman wouldn't be able to tell if it was good or bad. However, Lin Jin had witnessed the sword energy before, so he was fearful of it. Moreover, he had fused with Xiaohua and had a Dharma body, so his comprehension of such concepts was much better. However, he hadn't fully comprehended the sword scroll yet. Even if he had only scratched the surface, it was enough to make him shudder. This was good stuff. Since it was good stuff, he would learn it. Lin Jin had gained a lot from this trip. Not only did he learn the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll, but he also learned cloud treading. He even met Du Li's remnant soul, turned a demon into jade, and nurtured the demon slayer. Lastly, he memorized the Divine Path Sword Scroll. Once he comprehended it, it might just be his biggest gain from this trip. There was nothing else here. Calculating the time, it had been a few days since he entered this unending nature landscape. Lin Jin knew it was time to leave. However, due to Du Li's request, he had to clarify some things before he left. Sitting cross-legged to regulate his breathing and recover his spirit energy, Lin Jin used the cloud staircase again and headed for the cloud gate that General Lion was guarding. General Lion was startled to see Lin Jin again. General Lion was a pet beast that Du Li had taken in and enlightened. Lin Jin told General Lion about Du Li's request with a straight face and even said a few commands that only Du Li knew. General Lion didn't dare to doubt Lin Jin as he immediately knelt down to pay his respects. General Lion, continue guarding this place. Don't bring any more outsiders into this nature landscape. I still have some important matters to attend to. Once I'm done, I will return to retrieve the nature landscape, Lin Jin instructed. Of course, he couldn't say that he wasn't capable enough to know how to retrieve this nature landscape. General Lion didn't dare to doubt Lin Jin, so he immediately obeyed the order. With that said, Lin Jin brought Hu Yuzhen with him, and had White Ape carry the coffin as they leaped out of the nature landscape. When the white fog dissipated and the abandoned mansion came into view again, Lin Jin realized it was already daytime after many days. Chapter 289. Under the illumination of the sun, the manor was devoid of its usual gloominess. It looked just like any other abandoned house, dilapidated and dilapidated. Lin Jin closed his eyes. He could vaguely sense the location of the unending nature landscape. It should be somewhere under this manor. However, a magical artifact like this couldn't be obtained by digging through the soil. There must be some other way to retrieve it. Take it slow. Lin Jin knew he couldn't become a fatty in one go. Compared to other blood contract cultivators, he was already ahead of them. He was probably the only person in the world who could cultivate the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll. However, it was hard to say. Although the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll seemed like a powerful cultivation method now, it was merely a beginner's cultivation method back in the ancient times. Now that Lin Jin had mastered cloud treading, although he couldn't travel on the clouds for long periods of time, he could still use them to increase his speed. Based on his calculations, he might be able to make it back in a day. However, Lin Jin didn't want to go back so soon. Be it the Beastmaster Fourth Scroll, Cloud Treading, or the Divine Blade Scroll, they were all just beginners, especially the Divine Blade Scroll, where he only memorized the cultivation method. Instead of rushing back, he might as well find a secluded place to familiarize himself with it while he was still comprehending it. At the very least, he had to stabilize his cultivation. Also, he had to solve Hu Yuzhen's problem. Unlike Xiang'er and the others, Hu Yuzhen was a monster who had been cultivating for centuries and had even turned into a demon. Lin Jin didn't want to bring a troublesome person like her back to Maple City. With this in mind, Lin Jin got up and headed outside. He first used camouflage to conceal the group before heading toward a nearby green mountain. Along the way, Lin Jin tried using cloud treading on his feet. Sure enough, he felt much lighter. Although it couldn't compare to the legendary shrinking distance, he was still faster than a horse carriage. Along the way, Hu Yuzhen didn't dare to ask too many questions. Wherever Lin Jin went, she would follow. She was both anxious and expectant. Of course, after leaving the nature landscape, Hu Yuzhen was already thinking of running away. However, her desire to cultivate a Dharma body was even stronger. Hence, even though she was a little afraid of Lin Jin, she still followed him closely. At the top of the mountain, Lin Jin suddenly asked, "Miss Hu, do you know the name of this mountain?" Hu Yuzhen didn't expect Lin Jin to ask her about this. However, she didn't know. As a tiger demon, she wasn't interested in this small mountain. The mountain was only about 20 miles deep, so it wouldn't be able to hide any large beasts, let alone give birth to any monsters. Plenty of people would come here on a regular basis, but to a demon like Hu Yuzhen, this mountain wasn't worth mentioning. So she told the truth. Lin Jin nodded. Using cloud stairs, he climbed up a cliff and saw a large pine tree on the cliff. Beside it was a stone tablet with the words Mount Gua written on it. It was unknown who this stone tablet belonged to or when it was erected. It looked very simple and unadorned. After being weathered by wind and rain, it was already mottled. However, the words carved on it still carried a kind of artistic conception. It should have been written by a master calligrapher. This cliff was definitely a difficult place for the average person to reach. The main problem was that the only path leading up had collapsed at some point in time. With no path to reach the top, even an expert climber would have a hard time. Using cloud stairs earlier, Lin Jin managed to climb up as if it was flat ground. White Ape was adept at climbing, so even if he was carrying a coffin, it was a piece of cake for him to climb up. As for Hu Yuzhen, forget this cliff, she could even climb up to the most dangerous place. The top of the cliff wasn't huge, but it was about the size of an average courtyard. Besides the large pine tree, there were only some flowers and grass. There was a stone slab under the pine tree. With a wave of Lin Jin's hand, a cloud rolled up and swept away the dust. Lin Jin sat down cross-legged and glanced at Hu Yuzhen. "Miss Hu, you're trying to achieve a Dharma body because you want to achieve a breakthrough, am I right?" Hu Yuzhen quickly nodded at this. "Please enlighten me, Mr. Lin." Lin Jin continued, "Dharma bodies are all about purity and cleanliness. You've been cultivating for hundreds of years and you've killed too many people. Your body is already riddled with evil energy, so it's only natural that you can't achieve a Dharma body under such circumstances." Lin Jin was just making things up, but since he said it so seriously, Hu Yuzhen had no choice but to believe him. Demonic energy surged in Hu Yuzhen's eyes, but she didn't even notice it. She asked, Then what should I do?" Seeing that it was about time, Lin Jin said, "I have a method that can help you achieve a breakthrough without achieving a Dharma body. Are you willing to try it?" Hu Yuzhen was clearly hesitant. It wasn't her fault though. All these years, the obsession of achieving a Dharma body had been deeply ingrained in her. It was also because of this that Hu Yuzhen became obsessed. Lin Jin didn't know who the person who told her that only a Dharma body could help her achieve a breakthrough was, but that person probably didn't have any good intentions. Despite knowing that a Dharma body was hard to find, he still pointed out a path that was impossible to reach. Wasn't he trying to drive this tiger demon crazy? In other words, he was purposely forcing her to become a demon. Hu Yuzhen was already deeply obsessed. If Lin Jin hadn't experienced what happened in nature's landscape, Hu Yuzhen's demonic energy would definitely erupt and she would immediately turn against him. After all, the source of this demonic energy was her obsession with a Dharma body. Once this obsession was broken, the demonic energy would lose its foundation and it would definitely collapse. Even if it was for self-preservation, this demonic energy wouldn't give in so easily. However, after experiencing what happened in nature's landscape, Lin Jin's words had a different effect. Right now, Lin Jin was the most powerful. Hu Yuzhen, including her demonic energy, wouldn't dare to turn against him. Just like now. Dark energy swirled in her eyes as if she was about to explode, but she would always shrink back at the last moment. Of course, Lin Jin was confident. With the demon-slaying hall and the first demon jade in his possession, Lin Jin naturally knew how to slay demons. Speaking of which, it was a mystical method. In summary, the first step was to intimidate and disintegrate the enemy. Just like an eggshell, in order to disintegrate it, one had to first crack it. This was what Lin Jin had said earlier. Of course, Hu Yuzhen wasn't a great cultivator like Du Li who could dispel her obsession on her own. Even when it dissipated, she didn't resist. Hu Yuzhen would definitely struggle. A few words wouldn't be enough to make her dispel her demonic energy. Hence, the Demon Slayer would be used next. It was also Lin Jin's first time using the Demon Slayer. Right now, there was only a weak shadow of the blade, but Lin Jin was able to learn how to use it without a teacher. After all, it was an artifact produced by the museum. Just like now, when Lin Jin noticed Hu Yuzhen's hesitation and the demonic energy fluctuating in her eyes, he immediately used his psyche to activate the Demon Slayer in Demon Slaying Hall. Lin Jin chanted inwardly. Immediately, an illusory shadow shot out from his mouth. It was so fast that it reached Hu Yuzhen's head in an instant. Immediately, the shadow of the sword grew larger, becoming a 3-foot-tall peak. Then, it slashed down heavily. Other than Lin Jin, none of the beasts on the cliff could see what was happening. All they could feel was the sudden change in the atmosphere as a scorching wind rose from the ground, rippling through the surroundings. Hu Yuzhen's body and spirit weren't harmed in the slightest as the sword shadow slashed down. However, the sword shadow pierced through her body and brought out a mass of black smoke. This time, Hu Yuzhen wasn't the only one who saw it. The white ape also saw it. However, it all happened so quickly. Although the black energy was tough and difficult to deal with, it was immediately pulled out of Hu Yuzhen's body by the blade. The demonic energy was absorbed into the blade and dissipated. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.